Long days, pleasant nights, and welcome to Kingslingers, a Doof media podcast journeying through Stephen King's Dark Tower series and beyond. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host, pondering weak and weary, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, tapping on my chamber door. It's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
Nevermore.
What does that mean?
I'm just resting on this bust of Palace and chilling.
Just chilling?
Yeah.
This week on the show, part 3 of Black House Knight's Plutonian Shore begins with chapters 15 through 18. The police catch a fisherman, but not the fisherman, and Jack learns the history of the Black House and that he might be forced to enter its spooky and dangerous halls. Matt, what did you think of this week's reading?
I mean, this is probably my favorite yet. Just, a lot happens in here. I was kind of amazed. This is one of those weeks where I kept checking that I hadn't misread the chapter count for the week, because I was like, man, we're just covering so much ground here. There's so many different, kind of set pieces and just plot movements, and just loved it. Yeah,
it's wild that last week we basically spent the entire week covering the event of Ed's Eats. Like that was the whole week. And this week we do 6 of those back to back.
True. Yeah.
I mean, I think the book has picked up the pace. It's moving. There's a lot happening. I agree with you. I said this, I think I said this on Twitter last week, but I am loving this book in a way that I never have before. And I was really, really honestly kind of sort of dreading doing this book. When I looked at the schedule before we started this whole season 2 thing, I looked at the Talisman, I looked at the Stand, and I was like, yes, I can't wait to cover those books. And then in between those was Black House, and I was like, it might be a struggle to find things to say and to be energetic and excited about this book for however many weeks we're doing this for. But I'm so thrilled that that's not the case at all, that I'm just loving the writing. I'm loving what it's doing. I'm loving, I love the slow roll of the first half, and I'm loving that this is speeding up now, and I love everything that it's doing. And I think we're starting to maybe get an idea of what it's saying too, which is really exciting. I'm not sure we quite got a lock on that yet, but you can kind of start to maybe see the shadowy shape of a theme, and that's pretty exciting too.
Yeah, I think I agree. And as we get into the episode, I think we will hammer out what we mean by that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's do it. Before we get into the episode, though, we just wanted to announce that we do have another episode of our Patreon exclusive series called Other Levels of the Tower, where we take a look at adaptations of King novels that, pretty much that Matt hasn't read yet, but that's okay. Matt, what adaptation of a novel did we look at this month?
We watched the brand new Firestarter adaptation. Brand new movie.
Brand new.
Don't know
just
if people
released.
Even know that it exists, but it does.
And there might be a reason why people, if they don't know it exists, there's a reason for that, right?
Yeah.
It's real bad, folks. If you want to listen to Matt and I be very negative about a film for 45 minutes, join Patreon now. No, I mean, I think it was a really good conversation about why the multitude of ways that this movie just does not work at all. Very disappointed in it. Major bummer. I don't know if folks out there have seen it, if you will agree with us or not. Maybe there's someone out there that really loves this movie. I'd love to talk to that person, but just not for me at all.
Yeah, me neither. And I hadn't read the book, but it's one of those cases where the movie's so bad, I'm like, I have to read this book to find out what they were even trying to do.
Yeah, it's they were trying to. I don't even know, man. They didn't succeed, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can check us out at patreon.com/doofmedia. If you donate at the $10 level or higher, you get access to that episode. And, oh my gosh, so many other episodes. I think this is we've been doing this particular bonus show for almost 2 years now. And then on top of that, we've got all the other bonus content we're releasing basically once a week. So lots of fun stuff to check out. Head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and do so.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, let's get into it. Normally, we'd spend the first few minutes of this episode talking about the name of the Part 3 section, because as we opened our book this week, we saw Part 3, Knight's Plutonian Shore. As you pointed out last week, this is a quote from Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. But we don't have to do this. We don't have to do the work to analyze why this section is called this, because the book kind of does it for us. The poem, The Raven, will come to come to the center of the story very deliberately and specifically here in just a few minutes. So we'll talk about the subject line and what Knight's Plutonian Shore actually means when we get to those sections.
That's
so
right.
Instead, we'll just begin with the chapter. I'm kind of mad at Steven, by the way, and Peter for doing this to me. They take my job away from me.
Yeah, I think this is one of those cases where kind of like a lot of the stuff that we did in the Wastelands with T.S. Eliot, where it was just really obvious that King wanted you to go read the Wastelands.
Yeah.
Here he's basically going, go read the Raven. Come on, just go read the Raven and then come back.
You should, though. I mean, we're going to be talking about the Raven here in a few minutes, but if you haven't read that poem yet, spend a few minutes and go read it. It's just excellent.
Yep.
All right, we begin chapter 15 with the town of French Landing reacting to the approaching fog that we saw at the end of last week. The imagery here, I think, is delightful, Matt, as we start this chapter and this section with like basically every resident of Cooley County is accurately predicting what the arrival of this fog means, that the streets basically belong to the fishermen tonight. People are going to be staying in. You can't see. It's dark and ominous and spooky. And I think that is what the fog represents. It's not death. Like, well, the fog itself doesn't necessarily represent death by itself, because death has already come to French Landing. Death has been here for the past few weeks, but it's more of that slippage, right? It's more descent into a world where the bad guys rule the streets. When Dale temporarily loses his son as the kid walks out the back door of their house and into the fog to go swing on a swing set, the book says, into the fog and out of the known world, right? So this fog is kind of declared as the unknown, the alien, the dangerous, the other world that we don't quite understand. Knight's Plutonian Shore, actually.
Yeah, the book leaves it vague whether the fog is actually magical, but in the end, it doesn't really matter. It's it's a symbol of the otherworldly, as you said.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, you think it's just poorly timed fog?
I mean, I actually lean toward it being possibly magical, but not in a way that's going to matter a ton. Like I think I joked at some point, maybe it was on the episode, that like this was going to be the mist, that Todash beings are going to start walking out of it. But like, I think the reason your head goes there is because it's like, well, this is very much like Todash. It's a liminal space of like horror of the unknown, and it's not that Todash monsters are going to come out of it, but your child may very well disappear into it, or be taken by a very real monster, in this story being the fisherman.
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily directly, literally magical to just say that this is like that the things in French Landing, things in Cooley County are getting worse and escalating. And the slippage that the book has been talking about so much is accelerating. And so this could just be a natural phenomenon reaction to that slippage that's happening. So
yeah, that makes sense. I like that.
It's fun. It's fun either way. You're right. I really love this moment though at near the beginning of this, where Tyler Marshall his father is kind of sitting at home, messing with his son's baseball cap. He tries to put the cap on his head randomly, realizes it's too small, and he almost undoes the snaps to make it a little bit bigger, and then he stops himself. And the line we get here is, the idea shocks him. Suppose that was all it took to kill his son, that one simple, deadly modification. The idea strikes him as both ridiculous and utterly inarguable. And I love this because it feels so real to me, right? Like when you're in this moment of intense trauma and pain and uncertainty, like the irrational suddenly becomes rational, that this is all it would take to damn my son forever. And it's just, it's completely unbelievable, but I completely buy why someone would legitimately think that in the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to be a pretty sort of self-consciously rational person, or I try to be, but I still definitely indulge in like magical thinking when it comes to things that are kind of really emotionally important, in a way where it's like couldn't bear the thought of it not working out. Then it's like, yeah, well, it doesn't hurt anybody for me to just not change this baseball cap. Yeah.
I wonder if that's like a desperate attempt of a person who is realizing that how little of the world they control, trying to stake some control over it, even if it's control via inaction, that there's something I could do or not do that would change the fate of my son right now is kind of a desperate attempt to say, I still have some control over the situation, when the reality is he has absolutely none.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I mean, human beings are really bad at being stuck in a situation where there's just nothing you can do about the thing that is very, very important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, this is an extremely tenuous and unrealistic connection, but still not going to change the hat.
Yep, still not going to do it. So eventually the book flies us in search of our good friend, our buddy, our pal, Charlie Burnsides, who takes us to the Nelson Hotel and the room of Andy Railsback, a 70-year-old man just chilling and heating up some soup on his hot plate in his old crummy hotel room.
I'm very familiar with how much 70-year-old men love their cup of soup.
It's true. It's very true. The writing, as we describe this Nelson Hotel, though, I think it's just really phenomenal, Matt. And I need to read this section for you here. This is the kind of place you don't come to unless you've been here before and all your other options are pretty much foreclosed. It's a place where men who left their families 2 decades before now lie on narrow beds with pea-stained mattresses, coughing and smoking cigarettes. The scuzzy old lounge, where scuzzy old Hoover Dalrymple once held court and knocked heads most every Friday and Saturday night, has been closed by unanimous vote of the town council since early June, when Dale Gilbertson scandalized the local political elite by showing them a video of 3 traveling strippers who billed themselves as the Anal University Trio, performing a synchronized cucumber routine on the tiny stage. FLPD cameraman Officer Tom Lund, let's give him a hand. But the Nelsons residents still have only to go next door to get a beer. It's convenient. You pay by the week at the Nelson. You can keep a hot plate in your room, but only by permission and after the cord has been inspected. You can die on a fixed income at the Nelson, and the last sound you could hear will be the creaking of bed springs over your head as some other helpless old loser jacks off. It's evocative and beautiful in its disgustingness, yeah. Right? Like, I think you just understand exactly what this place is.
Yeah, it's just this seedy land of disappointment.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm also kind of just pragmatically glad that we got this, because it's a very poor. I had a very boringly practical question, which was like, do elderly people really retire to live in hotels? And the answer is
they can't help it. Yeah.
Yeah. The answer is like, well, yeah, for a shitty kind of circling the drain hotel that's just desperately trying to scrape together revenue as they teeter on the edge of insolvency. Yeah, I guess in this case they do. Which kind of answers a question that I had in the back of my mind.
It is interesting though. The Talisman was a book so much about youth, about being a child and being young and the experience of being a young man and what the world can do to you. And it's not that this is a book about the elderly, not at least in the way that Insomnia was, but it is interesting that we have 2 places in this book, 2 big important sequences that take place at a place that primarily housing elderly people, right? We have Maxton's elder care facility, and then we have the Nelson, which is not specifically an elder care place, but we're kind of basically told that most of the residents here are really old people that are basically just kind of waiting to die. And that's an interesting, choose a pattern, right? So you start to say, okay, what are we saying? Why are we specifically exploring the elderly in this way? I mean, it's a pretty depressing outlook, right? If your choices are Maxton's and Nelson, like, Jesus,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, and plus our, villain is an elderly person, or, a demon inhabiting an elderly person, however you want to look at it. It's definitely, we're looking at this idea that the elderly are treated like garbage, which is something very reminiscent of, Insomnia. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I'm not quite sure how it's going to land. We saw that when Henry played the music for them, it like made them younger, but by treating them like garbage, it obviously is making them kind of probably die faster than they would otherwise.
Yeah.
And then, what are we saying exactly with our villain being an elderly person? I don't know yet.
Yeah, we'll see. And so Andy heads out of his room to ask a neighbor if he wants some of his delicious hot plate soup, and on his way sees a robed, one-slippered fisherman wandering down the hall and disappearing into the room of George Potter. Andy thinks this guy is probably a thief, and in the interest of protecting his home, as crummy as it is, he follows the man into Potter's room. So what was your reaction to this whole scene playing out this way, Matt?
Well, one thing I really liked is that he kept saying he's a fucking thief.
Yeah.
Which is a delightful, like, subtle, not hitting you over the head with it fully call back to the
Fushing Fief. Yeah.
Fushing Fief thing.
Yeah.
From the perspective of this being a detective story, this is a huge deal that we have the clue of the slipper, the bee slipper, out in the open. We now have this this connection, that someone knows this connection between our murderer and the victims. And the book makes sure that we see, that there are people both inside and outside of the old folks' home that take note of the bee slipper. So it's like, okay, we're getting somewhere. We've got traction, because up until this point, there's been like literally nothing to connect the murderer to the murders.
Yeah. I think my favorite line of this week was actually when they're trying to reason why the fisherman would try to frame this guy, and Dale says he knows we're on his trail, and Jack's response is, "Oh, are we?" Because no, they haven't been at all.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think you're right, and of course the bee imagery is very specific, because we'll talk about this again near the end of this week's reading, but the imagery from our opening made us draw specific attention to the bee hovering around the crime scene. And so we are already like primed for bee things, and we keep seeing them again and again, here.
Yeah.
I'd love this line. I don't exactly know why, as they're going, Andy's kind of reasoning about what he wants to do. And the text says, Potter's probably having a beer next door. This, at least, turns out to be true, and left his door unlocked. This, we may be assured, is not. It's just fascinating to me the way in which the narrator is interjecting in the story in this book, probably more, I think much more directly than in the Talisman, for sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and what's funny is it doesn't even matter that Potter's next door having a beer, really. Well, I guess maybe it does matter, because that's where they pick him up. So So sure, I guess that matters, but
I don't even know if it matters. I think it's just flavor. It's just the storyteller kind of reminding you specifically that you're being told a story.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think you're right. It is an interesting choice, though. It's funny because I agree that I like it, which is the reason I say it's funny, because if you'd asked me in advance if I would enjoy and appreciate this kind of narration interjection, I think I would have said no. I think I would have said no, it's distracting. Mm-hmm. It reminds you that you're reading a story, which is distracting, which turns out not to really be the case. So I'm just wrong.
I mean, I think it's like in anything else, it's all on how you do it, right? Mm-hmm. So there are versions of this that could be very distracting and take you so far out of the story that you're just not there with the characters at all. But King and Straub here managed to do it, I think, just in the perfect way that does make you aware you're being told a story, but maybe you're kind of more into it that way. We've made this imagery again and again about sitting at the bar being told a story by your friend, and I don't think King is scared of you ever feeling that way.
Yeah. Another interesting thing about this narrator is that the voice of the narrator is within the story, in the sense that the narrator believes that this is all true.
Yes.
This is not The Princess Bride, where the narrator is the grandpa reading the book, and we understand that this is fiction, this is not real, and every time the grandpa interjects, we are reminded that this is a story, this is a pretend story that's being told, whereas this narrator is more like a kind of omniscient ghost being that exists within this story somehow.
Right.
How exactly doesn't matter.
Yeah, because I mean, we didn't talk about it, but as we're kind of exploring the town, as the fog sets in, there is a moment where we the text says we force our way past the snarling dog into the Nelson Hotel, right? Which again puts you, we talked about this in the first week, but it puts you directly into the scene. Not only are you observing the scene, you are there. You are moving through it as if you are a physical object, and the narrator continually reminds you of this.
Yeah, right.
It's really fascinating.
I mean, considering how meta things have been in these stories, I do wonder at some point, Jack's going to sense, a presence in the room and, turns to look at the camera.
It's you. Yeah. We'll see.
Say my name, really Sebastian.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What a pull. I wonder how much our listeners get that.
All of them.
I think our listeners skew older, so probably most of them.
Yeah. Actually, it's Bastion, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
So Andy finds the room empty. Of course, we know this as Bernie probably just, flipped back into a different world and walked home. But he kind of storms in any way. And this is, I think, really important. The reason why here, the text here says, you can scare him, you bet. He's a retired salesman, not Superman. But if you load enough tension on top of fright, you turn it into anger, same as enough pressure turns coal into a diamond. And I think this in this moment is talking specifically about his fear of this criminal. But I think this is a good overall conceit of this entire week of reading, right? Like that basically everything we've seen from how the townsmen are acting, how Tansy is acting, how everyone's kind of getting riled up, it's basically turning their fear of the fishermen into anger. And that's what's happening. That's why people are it's why we keep walking up to the line of a full-blown riot.
Yeah, it's just incredibly true. And I think it's a pretty important insight into psychology, that fear turns into anger. And this is, in fact, the main source of human anger. And this is something that King plays with over and over and over. Yeah.
So in Potter's closet, Andy finds something. We don't actually see what it is right away. And I'm curious what you think of the choice here. So basically, Andy opens the closet, sees something that absolutely horrifies him. We cut away very briefly to the fisherman. And then we cut right back to Andy and we learn what he sees here is pictures of the fisherman's victims. I'm curious what your thoughts of this structural choice are. We kind of interrupt the sequence of events to quickly cut back to Maxton's and Bernie getting in bed. And then we're back.
Yeah, I'm glad you pulled this out to talk about, because I think it is particularly interesting. The book has really made this point of not shying away from the horrible reality of the murders and having whole bits of the book that are dedicated to making sure that we are looking at it. But in this particular case, I think in contrast to those other story moments, which were very explicit, I think we're very much inside Andy's point of view. And within Andy's head, what he's seeing is too horrible for him to really look at directly and think about. And so it makes sense to me that he would flinch away from it in this way, and that because we're in his point of view in this scene, that it would be conveyed that way.
Yeah, I like that. Like his brain is literally not functioning in these moments, so we don't get to be in it.
Yeah. That's it gives you a feeling of how severely he's reacting to it.
Yeah. That brings up a thing I wanted to ask you generally. How are you doing as far as the way this book's making you feel at this point? Because I know very early on, for very obvious reasons, this book was an emotional mess for you. Is it still that way, or have we've kind of moved past the most grisly portions of what's happening here? That's kind of how I feel. It's I didn't feel like this week's reading or even last week's reading a little bit was quite as grisly.
Yeah, definitely less upsetting, and partially because the elements of it, a fun detective story, a fun adventure, have sort of crept in and taken root.
Sure.
And then there's also just been less of the grisliness. And the only thing this week that brought me any of that same level of upset was when we spend some time with the mother of the murdered child and kind of see how screwed up she is by it. But even that, it was almost that stuff is almost about how the way she's reacting is by not facing it, if you know what I mean. We didn't get to see her in the moment of finding out the news. We're watching her buffered by multiple layers of medication and now madness, so that she doesn't really have to feel those feelings and process them. And so it doesn't, on the empathy level, I think it doesn't make you feel as horrible as it felt to kind of be in Judy's head, for example.
Sure.
Before.
Yeah, to me that's sad, but sad in much less of a direct, oh my God, I'm putting my child's face on the dead child in this room type of sad.
Yes, it's a little bit distance.
Yeah. Okay, great. Just really curious.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we leave the scene abruptly. We talked about this and are back with Bernie, now back in Maxton's. And on top of being creepy, the scene with Bernie and Maxton's, we do we do learn a few things about him here. That his frame job on George Potter was intentionally. It was revenge for snaking a construction bid out from under him years and years ago back in Chicago. But we learned something else here, Matt. This is like the first beat of perhaps a full-blown 3 beat of kind of finally getting an answer of what Bernie is. Because the first beat here is, but Bernie has kept track of the thief these many years. Well, not Bernie himself, but as we must have now realized, this is a man with powerful friends. So this is really our first beat of kind of starting to explore the idea that this is just possession, this isn't actually Charles Burnside doing these things.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm picking up the same clues you're talking about here. Obviously, I don't really feel like I know exactly what's going on, how Dark Tower this is, how Crimson King this is exactly versus something else we haven't seen before. I don't know.
Sure.
We'll find out.
Yeah. So Bernie goes to bed, but not before summoning Gorg to go bug Tansy in the service to the Abala, which we finally get, I think, pretty much specifically told is just this nonsense word that means the Crimson King, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the vibe that I got as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So from here we go to Tansy, alone in her trailer, drunk and grieving the death of her child. Tansy randomly finds herself thinking about Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. And I just wanted to stop and talk about this for a bit because, we've joked in the past about how characters in King stories are somehow the most literate, well-read people in the universe, that even like people you would not expect to be pulling literary references out of their butt just manage to do it constantly. But I think The Raven is one that I can actually just fully believe, because I feel like outside of Shakespeare, The Raven is like the one poem that everyone reads in school. Like that's just like it's ubiquitous, right? Like I feel like everyone studies this poem. And it's also just the type of poem that sticks with you, even if you don't particularly like poetry, which I would prescribe to myself, or an earlier version of myself is not someone particularly in love with poetry. It feels like this poem feels different. Yeah.
I mean, I actually think that The Raven was sort of Poe's attempt to write an appealing poem, like because I mean it's okay, like on the level of symbolism and all of the things that poems are supposed to do, it's great, but also the way that he does the rhyming scheme is just like another level of pleasant above almost any other poem, because you've got this like internal rhyming scheme, and it focuses heavily on these aw sounds, which are not all that common in English, but the whole poem is just da 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 da. Like it's this great. It's so, that's why it's so fun to read. It's so fun to hear read out loud.
Sure.
So yeah, it's hugely popular. I remember my mom reading it to us when we were not little kids, but smaller even than the school age. And I think it's just because she was like, "This is awesome. You'll like this."
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, love The Raven.
Me too. One of my favorite poems for sure. So now in an extreme Dark Tower move, right? This is one of the most Dark Tower moments in this book so far.
Mm-hmm.
This is not just like a reference to the Raven, right? This is the Raven. As Tansy suddenly feels some tapping on her chamber door, she opens it up and in flies Gorg, the Raven kind. It's a crow, but it's close enough, right? And of course, unlike the Raven, Gorg has a lot more to say to Tansy than just nevermore. We learn in the next chapter what he tells her here is that that George Potter is the fisherman, and they've caught him, and he basically, the fisherman and Gorg are trying to spur up another riot. But let's talk about the Raven here, Matt, because obviously we've brought this story into the story, and so thematically the Raven, we're being told, is very important to what's happening here. So I think it's worth just talking about the poem a little bit here.
Right. So it's funny because I don't think I ever realized really what the Raven was about thematically until glancing over it again and having this story in my mind, because I was and it's actually not that obscure if you're thinking about it. I think maybe I was just too young previously, but like definitely you have a person. So mapping it onto this story works perfectly, because you have the main character of the poem is a person dealing, or rather avoiding dealing with loss of their beloved, which is exactly what Tansy is doing. She's doped to the gills on Valium or something. avoiding having to process the death of her daughter. And our character is like drowsing, having, reading some quaint and curious tome of forgotten lore, trying to drown himself in his learning and his rationalistic pursuits.
Mm-hmm.
And then the raven comes in, and the raven basically is madness, both in the poem and in this story, because, I don't know.
Yeah.
Literally, Gorg makes her insane, and then also the raven alights atop the bust of Pallas. Pallas represents rationality, clear thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, Knight's Plutonian Shore, our subject headline is Pluto is the god of the underworld. Knight's Plutonian Shore is literally the river Styx. So the raven also represents death in a lot of ways too, right? This is the death that our main character has been avoiding thinking about, just like Tansy. And I wonder, obviously you're right that the meaning and it's very clear here. It's a very kind of one-to-one comparison between Gorg and the raven and Tansy and our narrator in the poem. But I think we can expand this out a little bit too, because I think you could look at Jack in a very similar way, right? Jack is a character in the story who has spent, we learn, kind of most of his life busying himself with his reading, avoiding the truth of what happened to him as a child, avoiding the truth of what happened to his mother. We learn, by the way, we're going to get to this, but we learn in this week's reading that his mother died of cancer. That this is not something we knew. We knew she had died after the events of the talisman, but we did not know what killed her. And we learn this is cancer, and we'll talk about that more in a bit. But the idea that Jack has been not grieving, I mean, like it's subtle because Jack so specifically avoids thinking about his mother at all times, but like how omnipresent his mother is in this story is really quite remarkable when you actually sit down and look at it and think about it. That's one thing I've definitely been noticing on this reread, is like how often things are tied to her experiences, what would happen with her. There's a couple of them in this week's reading for sure, but she's just constantly there. And yet, like with the eggs and with the feathers showing up and the magical things showing up to kind of force Jack out of the stupor, it's kind of like his version of the raven knocking on his chamber door, threatening to either drive him insane or force him to face a thing that he's been avoiding facing.
I love that. Yeah, that's fantastic. Just the general idea of trying to bury yourself in whatever to avoid confronting either loss or grief or I mean, you could argue that Jack is also dealing with the loss of the territories. I mean, I still feel like there's a mystery there that we haven't had answered. I hope this isn't another blue plate thing where it's already been answered fully as it's going to be, and I'm holding on to hope that there's going to be some other fuller explanation.
Look, I'm not going to say there's going to be a section of the book where it's going to say like, by the way, the reason I worked so hard to forget all this is because X. Like that is not going to happen. But no, this is not you've just missed it, you dummy. Okay. I don't even understand why you haven't gotten there yet. Okay. If that were the case, I would just tell you.
Okay. As funny as it is to watch me flounder. Yeah. All right.
I think there are logical leaps you could make at this point in the book, but no, like I don't think you've just missed a huge piece of whatever puzzle this is.
Okay. Yeah, no, I love that kind of expansion of the Raven concept. And I think you're actually totally correct, because it's not just, this chapter that's called Nice Plutonian Shore, it's this whole section. Mm-hmm. And this is just as much about Jack kind of returning as it is Tansy's specific struggles. Yeah.
Lots more to talk about there, but we'll do it as we go through how Tansy relates to some of our other characters here.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's move on to chapter 16, which answers a question we might have had these past few weeks. This is the second beat of our 3-beat about what's going on with Bernie. The line opens here, says, Bernie is in a deep sleep. The spirit that now controls him, the demon, we might as well say, has its own agenda in French Landing, and it has used Bernie roughly over these last few weeks. Not that Bernie's complaining. He is a very willing accomplice. So there it is, right? It's kind of just laid out directly. And I kind of love how the book just lays this out matter-of-factly for you. It's just like, it's not like a big played up reveal. It's just like, oh yeah, he's being possessed by a demon.
Uh-huh.
There you go. Done.
Yeah, right. The book's kind of like, yeah, you probably should have figured this out by now, but just gonna make it pretty explicit here. I mean, it's funny, and I guess part of it is like I keep kind of forgetting about this fact. Like I keep slipping into just calling the fisherman Bernie, even though like the book's been pretty clear that most of the time we're not really talking to Bernie. Bernie's not home right now. And I don't know. I don't know if it's just language and I'm just saying the wrong thing, or if I'm literally forgetting. It's sometimes hard to tell. But yeah, anyway, you're right. I think the book wants you to be thinking about that distinction specifically here.
Yeah, I was actually worried I was going to cue you into this too much, because I don't know if you remember, during the 911 call, Bernie references a passage from the Bible, and that passage is specifically about possession and Jesus exorcising a demon from within someone. And I was like, oh, is he gonna put this together quicker than the book wanted him to, because I drew specific attention to this? You didn't, thank goodness.
Well,
but
yeah, I mean,
it was there.
I guess I didn't, but also, okay, I mean, that's kind of interesting, because I'm like, you know, we knew that you could be possessed by your twinner. Like, we already knew that was a thing.
Yeah.
And so the book is basically saying explicitly, well, this isn't as simple as Bernie's twinner happens to be a murdering psychopath. This is another step beyond that. It's territories related, but it's not territories related in the way that you are used to.
Yeah, because demons are things that we have dealt with many times in the Dark Tower universe before, right? Like we are old friends with the demons that will take over people, or try to take over people, or manhandle people. So it is something, definitely. You're right. I think this here specifically, we can conclude that it is more than just, oh, Bernie's twinner is the fisherman, which might have been where your head was going up until this point.
It was, yeah. I don't know about up until this point. I think I've gradually kind of just realized that it's not so simple as that.
Okay.
You know, interestingly, all of the demons that we know of, that I can think of at least, did come from Todash. So that's kind of already a Dark Tower connection, assuming that that's valid here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Matt. Okay, so a call comes into the police station from the Nelson Hotel, of course, pointing towards Potter as the fisherman. Dale springs into action, once again employing the use of the Thunder Five, one of which, Doc, just happens to be at the station doing their nightly checkup with the police. This is all pretty great, right? Like, just like seeing Dale. I think the book recognizes that it'd be very easy to see Dale as just like this in over his head incompetent person, but it continues to like give him things to do.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we're going somewhere with Dale, you know, like he's going to have an arc of some kind.
Sure.
This book has been dark enough that I'm not actually just going to say like, oh, it's definitely going to be one where he becomes awesome. Like, it could just be terrible for him. But yeah, this particular scene is great because it's just this perfectly executed clockwork piece of police work.
Yeah.
You know, but on the other hand, we can't really feel happy about it, because we know that it's the wrong guy that they're grabbing.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's really interesting, right? Because in the next scene, Dale calls Jack and asks him to come down to help again, basically filling him in on the fact that, holy shit, we've caught the fisherman. And we see here that Jack's reaction is basically indifferent. Like, oh, cool. Yeah, I don't care. And the reason this is because Jack knows already that this guy can't be it, because Jack knows that there's a bigger thing going on here. We're dealing with many worlds and maybe not explicitly demons yet, but he knows this is bigger than just some random guy living at a hotel, right? And that's really interesting, because the result of this knowledge Jack has from being this world hopping superhero is it makes Dale feel incompetent. Right? Like, this line here is, Dale's conversation with Jack has left him feeling very uneasy, as if there are huge clues and signposts that he, dullard as he is, has entirely missed. But what clues? For Christ's sakes, what signposts? And now a dash of resentment flavors his unease. Perhaps a high-powered Lucas Davenport type like Jack Sawyer just can't believe in the obvious. Perhaps guys like him are always more interested in the dog that doesn't bark. So it's really fascinating, right? Because it kind of maybe gives you a lens into what it's like being Jack Sawyer, a person who just knows things because he exists almost on a higher plane, a higher level of existence than everyone else, and how quickly you're just living your life and doing your job can lead to anger and resentment and insecurity in the people around you.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. It's sad to see Dale kind of go there. Like we don't think too ill of him because we understand like the stress he's been under and how you might feel resentful if you're like, you can't even let me keep this one victory, you know. Yeah, I agree with what you said about us, you know, better understanding like maybe some aspect of Jack's alienation, and kind of loneliness. Makes me think about. I was just thinking about how when he was a kid, he kind of had the option from the talisman to like become God. Basically, the talisman was kind of like metaphysically offering him the power of like, yeah, you know, you can just be one with the talisman and you will be part of everything and you will be God. And it's like for, you know, for someone like Sloat, that's appealing, or Sloat thinks that's appealing, even though, but for Jack, he's like, no, I don't want to be God. I want to be Jack. I want to be a person who lives his life. But it's like, the more you touch upon these like greater powers, the less of a person you are. Makes me think about like the really old guy in Insomnia. Like, he just kind of reminds me of him as like a person who sort of had become otherworldly. Somehow that book wasn't clear on how exactly, and it was like, well, it kind of made him less of a human in a sense. Like he was above reality, but that meant he couldn't really be of reality anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost as if, and I think we'll see this, like how often Jack calls the territories home now, how he feels so much more comfortable and safe in there. It almost feels like a Lord of the Rings situation, right? Where he's touched this magic and been part of this thing, and he just can't stay here anymore, right? It kind of feels like that at times. Like he doesn't belong here anymore. He's not of these people anymore.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm starting to get this feeling that Jack is, I don't necessarily think he's going to die in this story, but I don't think he's going to continue being a detective on Earth. You know,
so the story is not going to end with Jack like opening Jack Sawyer's French Landing private eye business.
I'm leaning away from that at this point, because like you said, I definitely get the vibe of it's like he's sort of, you know, just to completely ride your metaphor there, like he's got the Morgul wound. You know, he can't just do a really good job solving this case and go back to the way things were. There's, you know, I don't think there is a going back to the way things were for him.
Sure.
But maybe the story is saying something totally different than that, though. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. It could go in that direction. It could go elsewhere, for sure. So Jack and Henry jump into a car and head down to the station to help out. Continuing our obsession with smell in this series, Henry is here to point out that the entire town reeks. It's the fog, we're told, coming up from the river, but it's more than that. It's night's Plutonian shore. It's death. And Henry, just by smell, realizes what Jack already knows, that George Potter is not the fisherman. It's a wonderful little scene, and I'm introducing this here just to like smell, as you pointed out early in this book and several times in the Talisman, is just omnipresent in these stories. Like smell is one of the most important recurring conceits of these books.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
So seemingly out of nowhere, Jack asks Henry what the best record is, the best song. Henry answers Stardust by Hoagy Carmichael, which is a song about a man remembering his lost love, which makes sense for Henry right now. You know, like he's had this experience where he feels his wife's presence constantly, so he's thinking about her a lot. Makes sense. But Jack's answer here is the song Crazy Arms by Patsy Cline. We're told here specifically because Patsy Cline was his mother's favorite singer. Also, we're told that she died young. She was only 30 years old. She died in a plane crash, taken from this world too soon, probably similar to how he feels about his mother. But I maybe it's worth talking about like what the song's actually about, right? Because unlike Stardust by Hoagy Carmichael, Crazy Arms is not about, I mean, it is about lost love, but it's a very specific kind of lost love, right? It's not my love has passed away. It's that the person I love is now in love with someone else. They've moved on. They've left me behind. And that's an interesting choice here for our authors to make, right? Because if we're talking about Jack's mother, that's not true, right? She's dead. She didn't like leave you behind. She didn't choose someone else. She's dead. So it's just interesting to think about. I just wanted to get your take on it.
Yeah, I mean, clearly he's thinking about his mother, right?
Yes.
And I mean, I don't know. It's funny because we always have to go Oedipal when it's Dark Tower related, but like I don't really think that Jack thinks that his mother's cheating on him. I think it's just maybe a feeling comes along with this song. I don't know. Like, okay, so I have to be honest. What this reminds me of, like, it's very personal to me, and so my this is interfering with my ability to be objectively analytical. Because like my mom, when I was really little, she would sing this song "If" to me, which I don't even know if you know what that song is, but that's clearly a song about a romantic relationship. It's not about like heartbreak or anything. It's just kind of a love song, but it doesn't really matter. It certainly didn't matter to 5-year-old Matt. Like it's a beautiful song. When I hear it, I don't think about the fact that it's a love song. I just think about my mom singing it to me. It's just a sweet memory.
Sure.
And really most love songs, you can kind of take away the romantic element and just have it be about these strong feelings. And so I'm not really answering your request to analyze this, because I'm just saying, like, for me, it's actually makes total sense to have like to have some particular song that makes you think of your mom, even though it kind of doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Yeah,
and I 100% agree with you. You know, there is no Oedipal thing here. This is just a song that Jack's mother loved very much, and he's begun to associate it with his mom, and he's thinking about and missing his mom. I guess my point was just from the dualistic perspective, like the authors chose this song in particular, right?
Yeah,
they chose this song, and it's curious to me that instead of choosing a song about, you know, a person that you loved that has died, let's say, they chose a song about a person that you loved is now with someone else, you know? Mm-hmm. It's a song about a woman being depressed and almost driven crazy by the fact that her love is gone somewhere else, you know?
Yeah.
Like crazy arms that reach to hold somebody new, but my yearning heart keeps saying, "You're not mine." My troubled mind knows soon to another you'll be wed, and that's why I'm lonely all the time, right? So it's like specifically like I am never going to love another person. I'm going to be with other people, but I'm never going to love another person because I know that you aren't mine anymore. And I guess that part, if you squint, you know, take out the sexual connotation of it, is literally just like it maybe explains, you know, Jack's failure to be in meaningful romantic relationships, or just meaningful relationships in general in his life, because he's lost his mother, which is this core defining relationship for him. Yeah, I like that. You know, the only other thing that I have to maybe add would be that it kind of makes me think about Judy and how he has this, like, we can maybe call it unrequited love for Julie, which is Judy, which is like totally new, you know? And so, yeah, but on a, like you said, on a dualistic level, if we're trying to introduce this idea of like the heartbreak of unrequited love, then maybe that's one reason why they would have chosen this song. Yeah. That's a good point. I like that. So meanwhile, equipped with Gorg's terrible knowledge, we see Tansy head down to the sandbar and whip up a mob, saying they've got the fishermen down at the station and we've got to go get them. So we're leading to another standoff between police and the public here in 2 weeks, right? And I guess my question here is this repetitive, or is it just perfectly building in your way, in your opinion? Yeah, I liked it. I saw it as like slow burn turning into a boil. I enjoyed it. Cool. Yeah, I think, you know, if I'm talking about adapting this story, I think probably one of the first things I would do is combine those two encounters into one. But I agree, in a novel format, it works to kind of ramp up and escalate your tension. That's a good point.
yeah, I do agree that pacing is one thing that we completely lose any sense of when we're doing these deep dives. This is just,
Yes.
and we've commented on this before, but it's inevitable. Like, so, I think we actually did complain about at least the very first chapter being kind of slow, and not the very first week reading, at least being like, okay, what are we doing? Where are we going? Didn't even meet Jack Sawyer for I don't know, hundreds of pages.
Yeah,
something ridiculous. So anyway, I like this though. Right now, I do.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I'm not complaining about it. I was just curious because one of the things that popped into my head is, oh, we're having a standoff, and oh, we just did that last week too. Wonder what Matt thinks about it.
Yeah.
So we also see in this moment that a cop decides to call Wendell Green from the evidence cell phone that Dale has so actually cleverly used to make sure the arrests won't go public, which is ironic that the use of that phone was specific to make it so the public didn't know about it, and the cop that had the phone called a reporter. But I mean, one of the things I wanted to point out here, there's something that stood out to me that was really interesting, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but the cop starts the phone call with Wendell saying, "Hello, asshole," which is not quite the same, but is very similar to the way the fisherman starts his 911 call to the police, which was, "Hello, asswipe." And I'm not saying here that the person who's holding onto the cell phone is actually the fisherman. No, I think it's probably just the cop that Dale handed the phone and told them to call people with. But I wonder if by mirroring sort of those two introductions to these phone calls, we're trying to demonstrate that the choice here was done with maybe the same amount of spite and malice as the fisherman's call to the police was.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I admit that I'm confused about what's going on with the phone call made by the cop, because the text itself is very cagey about who made this call, as if the revelation of who made the call will actually matter. Like it's a secret. Who made the call? I don't know. We don't know. Yeah. In stark contrast to the book being extremely clear that it was, the Mad Hungarian who leaked the previous information and got almost fired for it, and now here's another person doing something which is, strictly speaking, like even worse, and it's like, and yet we're not finding out who it is. So it's like, it's interesting. There's definitely a mystery here. Whether it's going to be a significant mystery or not, I don't know, but it's kind of baffling, because you'd have to be either an idiot or somebody with, like you said, like very actively malicious, trying to fuck something up.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you're right that the book does not tell us who this is. We know that a cop was sent to go get the phone, and we know that the phone was handed to Doc at some point because he uses it to call the rest of the Thunder Five, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think to be as charitable to this person as possible, who I know we knew the name of the cop that Dale told to get the phone, so we can maybe reason that he was the one to make the call, and to be as charitable to him as possible, it represents how incredibly confident they are that they've got the right guy. And so like it is more, a braggadocious look, we got him. So much, your shitty reporting, I'm so sick of your shitty reporting saying we weren't doing our job. We got him, without thinking of the consequences of possibly allowing that thing to leak.
Yeah, I can read it that way. Sure, that's not how I read it though, but could be that. Yeah.
But it just, I don't know why it stood out to me so much. Like I literally was reading the book and "hello, asshole," and I was like, wait, isn't that what the fisherman said on his call? And I had to flip the book back, and it's like, not quite. He says "ass wipe," but man, that's so similar.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it stuck out to me as being like, this guy, whoever's making this call, doesn't seem to be on the level. Like, I mean, you could be entirely right that it could just be like bragging, and it could be as simple as that, and as innocuous as that. But
yeah,
I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the arrest of Potter goes off without a hitch, because he's an innocent man who didn't do anything. And of course, we already knew that the problem point was not going to be at the arrest site itself, but at the station where this crowd of angry people are moving to. We move back with Jack for a minute as they are driving closer and closer to the station, and I wanted to read this because this seems like an important threshold event. Jack Sawyer is fully alive for the first time since he was 12 years old, riding back from California in a Cadillac Eldorado driven by a werewolf. He has an idea that later on he will pay a high price for this regained vividness, but he hopes he will just button his lip and fork over when the time comes, because the rest of his adult life now seems so gray. So I think the one thing he says is I'm back, and Henry says Jack is back.
Yeah.
So he's fully back from whatever stasis he had put himself in all the years between these two stories.
Yeah, and I mean, around this point is when he starts to feel back. Like we've seen flashes of a kind of our Jack up to this point, but it's from this point on that he really starts to seem like the kind of I don't know, effervescent magical being that he kind of was before.
Yeah, and I love that even a blind man can see it, which is like a recurring refrain in the story, but it's so fitting every time it's used. I just think it's so clever.
Yeah, I love it.
Speaking of weird narrative intrusions like we were talking about earlier, I really particularly like this one. Part-time officers Holtz and Nestler pull in behind a car bearing Gilbertson, Lund, Dulac, and Potter. We don't care much about Holtz and Nestor. Next in line is Jefferson and Sheeta, with Railsbeck and Morton Fine in the back seat. Morty is complaining about the lack of knee room. We care about Railsbeck, but he can wait. Next into the lot, oh, this is interesting, if not entirely unexpected. Wendell Green's beat-up red Toyota. Isn't it like this goes back to what we were talking about before, right? The storyteller interjecting into the story very specifically to say, like, okay, this guy's here, but yeah, don't worry about him. Don't worry about him. I shouldn't have even brought him up. Sorry. And we got this guy, and like, well, we care about him a little bit. And then like the this is interesting is so fascinating to me, right? Because like, this is a narrator that we've been told before is pretty omniscient, right? Like he's known how things were going to work out. He's known the truth of things. And then, but in this moment, he gets a little bit of pleasure, right? Like, look, it's Wendell Green. He's showing up.
Yeah, things are getting exciting.
Yeah, it's just delightful, man. I agree with you that I could very easily find this kind of thing annoying if not done in a fun, organic kind of way. But I don't know, it just feels right here.
Yeah, it seems to happen like just infrequently enough that it doesn't get annoying, but just frequently enough that you aren't jarred every time it happens.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I
agree. So what's happening in this moment is all the characters in our story are starting to congregate in one place, right? Which is always very exciting, because as that happens, of course, the tension starts to mount because we have all our previously established conflicts all coming into one place at one time, and we start getting really nervous. Like, so we got all these questions we have to ask. Is like, is Beezer going to walk up to George Potter and just fucking kill him? When will the mob come? Are they going to get out of control? How will Jack manage to solve this case? Like, we know who it is, but we haven't seen the threads that Jack is going to be able to tie together to actually figure out who it is. And it makes for the next chapter and a half to just be, in my opinion, like just super engaging reads.
Yeah, I agree. I was absolutely glued to my earbuds this whole week.
So Beezer walks up to Potter and demands to know if he killed his daughter, to which Potsy says earnestly no, and that honesty kind of disarms Beezer, and he lets everyone pass. And it's this kind of one moment of our tension calming, maybe one of the calms before the storms.
Yeah.
But we don't have the worst begin in this moment.
But it kind of makes us think of the Thunder Five as good guys and allies who are on our side. I mean, I think we kind of already did, but even more so because we see that Beezer is able to like accurately read the situation, and like any good Katat member, he's able to make good decisions when he needs to.
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. So Jack finally tells Dale what he thinks. This isn't the fisherman. And we see that Dale believes him because of the Kinderling incident, right? Just like we kind of flash back to when Dale first saw Kinderling and just immediately knew. Mm-hmm. And I love this because Dale kind of chalks it up to like superior Capice Man intuition. But we know it's a little bit more than that, right? Like, we know that he has just more information than Dale does.
Yeah, right. He's Exactly.
Yeah.
No Dale. The guy we're after can step between dimensions.
Yeah.
So you probably didn't catch him in the bar.
Yeah, but that means that the guy that Railsbeck saw in the hallway might actually be our guy. And of course, that's what Jack reasons, and we know that to be absolutely 100% true.
Yeah. Another thing I was thinking about is like, it's not great that, we had to arrest Potsy and put him through the ringer, but like having promptly reacted by bringing him in probably got this vital information to the cops much faster than it otherwise would have.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. This I think goes to the way we talk about in King novels how much evil hangs itself, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is the fisherman, for reasons that actually they kind of ponder in this very scene why he's doing this, right? This is that great line of, "Oh, are we on his trail?" They weren't, but like it is the arrest of George Potter of Potsy that actually gets Jack on his trail for the first time. I mean, by the end of this conversation, we have the name of the guy. Like we have Burnside's name.
Yeah.
Like we have, at least introduced into Jack's mind the thought that he might be an elderly person staying at Maxton's. Like, you walk into Maxton's at this point, Jack, and say, "Hey, do you have a man named Charlie Burnside staying here?" "Oh yeah, he's right there in room 14.
Yeah.
And boom, like it's which I mean, I'm kind of jumping ahead a bit here, but it is kind of remarkable how fast the investigation goes from this. Like, we start with them having nothing to, by the end of the sequence, knows who he is. But of course the mystery is broader than just Charles Burnside.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like the idea of evil destroying itself. I was thinking about this because, like, this is a question I had, I think, last week, I guess, was like, how much of this is, Bernie, and how much of it is this, possessor being, which I guess we now know is a demon. Mm-hmm. And then like kind of auxiliary question to that is like, how smart is this demon or whatever? And I was leaning more and more toward like, oh, this is a pretty conniving being, because it, like, for one thing, it seemed to have set up this elaborate trap for Jack, where it was like, left him the foot, and then kind of arranged a situation where Jack could have been very, very easily, implicated in mm-hmm. a way that would have really fucked up his involvement. And so I'm like, okay, so it's pretty clever. And it's like, okay, well, it's also pretty clever in a certain sense to like frame your nemesis for these murders in this very kind of deft way. But at the same time, it's stupid. Yeah. For the reason you just described, because he totally drew the detectives right to him. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm still up in the air over like how conniving and smart to think of this demon, Bernie, whatever, as being.
Yeah, because I mean, it's clear that Mr. Munchin, which is the name of the demon, we'll learn in the next chapter, but like it's clear that like he knows Jack in some kind of way, right? That's why the severed foot on the stoop of the house, like, right? And so he's specifically like needling at him because he knows him, but he is incapable of seeing that doing this is something that Jack will sniff right through immediately. I mean, maybe it's, again, overconfidence and an ego that the evil of a Stephen King universe has, that so often ends up being their downfall.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, that's a good thing you bring up, though, that like we don't really another mystery is we don't really know why he's already well aware of Jack. Yeah, who Jack is, what Jack did, all this stuff about Jack, where it's like, well, man, where is he coming from that he has all this information?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. All right, so Jack knows he needs to go question Potter to get this information. By the way, I just want to say broadly, on top of how quickly the investigation moves, I just think it's like really fun. We've talked about the two different types of mystery stories, right? We've talked about the mystery stories in which you don't know who done it, and the mystery stories in which you do know who done it. And the fun thing about the latter is that you can watch as your characters inch closer and closer to the clues and be like, oh, he's right. Like that playing off that dramatic irony of like, something that the character doesn't, and then you get to be like, oh my gosh, he's right. He's doing it. Look, he's doing it. We're seeing it. And there's none of that doubt or uncertainty of, okay, but is he barking up the wrong tree? Is this a red herring? There's none of that in this kind of situation. We get to just silently watch and enjoy a guy do his thing.
Yeah, it's delightful. I think the authors really understand that the meat and potatoes of a detective story is interrogation scenes, and interviews, and intense conversations where everything hangs on subtle bits of information or how things are worded or whatever. And that's what we finally get to here.
Totally. So before he can question Potter, though, the mob comes to the police station. But once again, Ka steps in and gives our Jackie boy a little help as suddenly his cell phone is ringing and it's Speedy Parker and Parkus on the phone offering Jack a present. This is so fascinating to me, Matt, because we've talked throughout all the books we've read for the series. There are moments in the book where Ka, Gan, the White, the Tower, like directly interfere with the events of the book, where they come into the book and say, here, take this totem, take this thing, use it, fight the evil. I am here to help you out. And then there are times when those forces cruelly manipulate things so the worst possible outcome can happen for our characters, but perhaps the best possible outcome for the universe, I guess. And it's really interesting to talk about the ways in which one happens over the other, right? Because this is the magic of the universe directly interfering and saying, we're going to give you a tool to do this, Jack. By doing this, the book kind of implies that Jack would not have been able to calm this mob on his own. That is, it is the intervention of the flowers from the territories and the magic they contain that allows him to talk Tansy off of her particular ledge, which in turn ripples out and stops the mob from happening. So, why do you think the White interferes sometimes and not others, I guess?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think my really kind of boring answer is like where it's practically useful to make the storytelling flow better. Because I think
that is true.
Because like here, I think what's like, I don't mind at all that we kind of have a eucatastrophe just kind of come in and wipe away the conflict with no real, like, it's not earned. It's just not earned. Like, it's just like, we're just going to deal with the mob magic. It's gone. Mob's gone now. And the thing is, I didn't care because I was like, oh shit, I want to get to this interrogation scene. I love interrogation scenes like that. That's where I want to go. So can we please just get over with this dealing with the mob thing? And the book was like, happy to oblige.
Sure.
So that's, it's funny because you can easily imagine it like not working out and being and feeling like, oh, that felt kind of cheap, but no, I didn't care. I mean, it's interesting because maybe some people did feel that way. I'd be curious to know. I mean, did you feel that way at all?
I didn't. I mean, I like it. I just think I think it's fascinating, and I don't have an answer to the question I posed to you, which is, why does the Tower intervene in some ways and not in the others? In some ways we're told specifically that Ka manipulates things to work the way it wants them to, regardless, right? That's Ka is like the wind, it blows, like you can't stop it. In others, Ka like reaches down and gives you a fan and says like, all right, we're blowing this way now, use it. And I don't know, like I kind of want to sit down and just write all instances of where a magical force in the book like directly intervenes and says, here, take this thing, like thinking about the talisman, like I think there's a huge difference between, for example, Jack having this random interaction with a carpet salesman and them giving him a mirror that reminds him of his mother, and Speedy Parker calling him on his cell phone and saying, there's some magic territories flowers in your bathroom.
Yeah.
Those are two very different things.
Just very, yeah, right. I mean, I kind of want to specifically talk about that because, like, number one, I'm still pretty confident that Speedy Parker is dead. And I thought that like if your twinner died, then you died soon after. So even if this is Parkus, that's still confusing to me. And then if it is Parkus, then how the hell is Parkus calling him on his cell phone? And it's then magic, also, baby. And then how did the flowers get into the bathroom?
It's magic.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that's the answer. To take that seriously is like, this is magic above and beyond just like the normal rules. This is the white magic. This is magic. Yeah.
It's for the same reason that Susan goes into the bathroom and gets a note from Stephen King warning her that she's in trouble. I mean, right? Like it's the same kind of thing, just done slightly differently.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. That's so funny. I totally forgot about that. It's great.
It's just this bathroom too. It's just these magical bathrooms, man. And the bathroom is where Eddie goes to escape from I can't remember the leaning tower guys.
Well, it's the bathroom on the airplane, and then it's the bathroom to escape from the mob.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Bathrooms are places of great power.
You've really cracked something here. If I'm ever attacked by a supernatural being, I'm going right to the bathroom.
Right in the bathroom. Yep. So Tansy and her mob show up, a single crow feather stuffed into her pants. I'm curious what you think of Tansy as a character here, Matt. I mean, she's obviously very tragic. I actually love the writing here where the book is kind of really kind to her in this moment. You know, I mean, that she's leading a mob that is about to, attempt to hang an innocent man. But I love this passage here in particular. Tansy for now has been the forgotten one. Even Cubby for now forgot her eventually, running off to Green Bay and leaving her here to work odd jobs and collect the ADC. Only Irma remembered her. Only Irma cared. And now Irma is dead. Not here to see, unless she's looking down from heaven, Tansy thinks in some distant and ever-receding part of her mind. Her mother suddenly idolized. Tansy for now has tonight become the dearest subject of French Landing's eye and heart. Not its mind, because its mind is temporarily gone, perhaps in search of its conscience, but certainly of its eye and heart. Yes. So like this idea that this poor ignored woman is now for the first time in her life being paid attention to. Like it's so sad.
Yeah. It's just, I agree. Not a lot to add. Like this is the part that I found the saddest overall. The build up to Gorg arriving, because it put me back in that headspace of like, how would you actually react? And it's not even like, how would you react? Because that implies that it's like a localized event of like, you react and then you're done. It's like, no, your life is never going to be the same after this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just so heartbreaking.
Yeah. I mean, the question I ask myself and stuff like this is like, what if someone or something flew into my life after losing my child and telling me, I know who did it, and the person that did it is going to be at this building right now, and you can go there and confront them right now. Like, what would I do? I would like to believe that I would do the right thing, right? But man, I don't know. I can't. That's an unimaginable thing to happen to a person. So
right.
I don't know.
If it's a magic raven, then I don't know. I'd probably listen.
So the distinct. So it's like any other person, you'd be like, all right, thanks, buddy. I'm not gonna go and try to get that person hanged. But like, if it's a magic raven, it's like, all right, let's do some hanging.
Well, now I'm thinking through, like, if it was a magic like dove, I might be like, oh, it's probably like a good dove, because symbolically, But if it's a raven, then you gotta be a little skeptical.
Oh, so you would be more skeptical by a raven.
I'd be more skeptical of a raven than I would of a dove. But if it's a magical bird in the first place, that just has all sorts of other implications that I feel like I would be more concerned with.
I feel like you're taking the least important part of this hypothetical question and really focusing on it.
You're definitely right about that.
So our wonderful doodle sanger that we talked about last week, just go ahead and just fashions a quick noose for Tansy, who holds it up into the air and begins chanting.
Yeah.
Just a skill she has, just to gonna throw a noose together for you real quick.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to know that she has that skill.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's like darkly funny that like the character named Doodles, who's basically been comic relief, is like just able to whip out a noose.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm reminded of, how all the townsfolk turned against Susan Delgado, and how, like, I think Stephen King has this idea of there's, a few millimeters of refinement hiding kind of horrible evil nature of humans, and particularly crowds of humans.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right that it was very specifically chosen to be Doodles. It could have been an anonymous person. It could have been someone, a different person. But no, it's Doodle Sanger, the moron from the last few chapters that was just doing stupid comedy beats. Yeah. So into this whole tension and mess walks Jack Sawyer carrying Speedy's gift, a bouquet of lilies from the territories. The magic of their flowers, their smell, by the way, their smell again, manages to break Tandy out of whatever corruption Gorg has laid over her. So when Jack tells her that George Potter is not the man she's here for, she believes him. And so there it is. It's kind of just done. Tension de-escalated.
Yeah. Yep. There we go. That handles that.
Yep. Except into this peace and bad situation avoided walks Wendell motherfucking Green, who decides not to just report on the news, but make it. He starts up the chant again, and for a very brief moment, it seems like it's going to be successful. It seems like he's going to whip up the crowd once again. But then, who's that? It's the Mad Hungarian stepping up to the plate. He swings, and he knocks Wendell Green the fuck out with his flashlight. Permanently de-escalating the situation here.
He's gonna earn that nickname.
Yeah. Okay, so this is interesting, right? Because I set you up for this, by the way, so sorry. We had a conversation last week about the suspension and or firing of the Mad Hungarian, of whether it would have been better to just fire him, because a man that kind of incompetent probably should not be a police officer. If we're speaking about the real world that you and I live in, probably don't want a person like that with a gun patrolling our streets. Like, yeah. I can just say that. But we learn in the story that the Mad Hungarian was not fired. He was just suspended. He was suspended by Dale, and so Dale showed him mercy, right? And so you have to wonder here in this moment, had he not been suspended, had he been fired, would he have been here, right? Like, if he had been just fully laid off, he could have just been pissed off at Dale and decided to sulk at home. But he's suspended, and he's like desperate to prove himself again because he wants his suspension to be revoked. So he's here, and him being here means that Wendell once again tries to do something and once again completely fails. So it leads you to believe that the book is saying that Dale made the right decision to not fire a person who probably shouldn't be a cop, right?
I don't know what it's. I think we have to reserve judgment. I mean, first of all, like, bashing a man on the head is bad.
Fair.
Like, yes, context matters, but, like, I don't know, man. There's a lot of ways you can stop a guy from talking if you don't want him to talk, other than hitting him on the head hard enough to knock him unconscious, which can kill someone.
He's fine, man. He's fine.
I mean, like, even a blind man can see that this is just going to make Wendell even more darkly furious at the authorities and more committed to fucking up their lives. We're basically going to see that in the next chapter.
No.
So, like, on net, this seems to have been a terrible thing, actually. Like right, like, in this moment, it's like, oh, good, it stopped the escalation of this particular moment. But I feel like it's just putting money in the bank for some later disaster.
I think that's fair. I think that's very fair.
Yeah.
All right, so that ends chapter 16. We move on to chapter 17, in which George Potter is interviewed by Jack. It's quite the interview. We kind of already talked about it a little bit, but a lot of information is learned here. But first, we have to talk about kind of the preparation for this interview. We learn that George Potter is dying of cancer. He's not long for this world. He kind of moved into the Nelson Hotel to spend his last few days in a town that he likes. And of course, this serves a purpose to immediately, like, bond him with Jack, who knows a lot about cancer. And this is where we learn the very important information that Lily Sawyer died of cancer. She got it when he was 12, then it went away. She got more than 5 years, we learn here, but Potter asks, got her in the end, though, didn't it? And Jack nods, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't this seem pretty fucking unfair? So, like, Jack Sawyer travels across the country, releases the white from its confinement inside the Black Hotel, brings goodness back to the world again, saves the world. His reward for doing this, and also for setting the power aside and not claiming it as his own, is it heals his mother for him. But so, like, the power of the white just put her into fucking remission?
Yeah,
that's bullshit.
Yeah, saved her for a while.
Yeah,
it's a slap in the face. It's the full power of the fucking Dark Tower talisman manifestation of the universe's will on Earth. It bought his mom a few years. Couldn't even wipe out the cancer. Okay, it does. It's. I mean, it's intentional. It's not like, oh, they messed up and no, like, for some reason she had to die. She had to die young, and Jack had to lose his mom. I don't know. It's really, like, shockingly unfair. Like, if you told me that at the end of, we talked about this before, if you told me that right after we finished the talisman, like, yeah, but she dies in, like, a few years anyway, then it would be like, what?
Yeah, you'd probably be pretty fucking pissed about that, wouldn't you? Yeah. So we don't know what to do with this other than be like, maybe these forces that are recruiting our characters to help save the world aren't so great sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the moments that reminds you of Ka, where it's like, well, we still need Jack, so his mom can't be around, so we need to kill his mom.
Yep. Maybe she was in remission for just long enough to where, like, I don't think we quite know. We know she got more than 5 years, right? I feel like the book has made it seem like her death was not super recently in the timeline of this story, but not like years and years and years ago either.
I don't remember how old Jack's supposed to be, but I could do the math.
Well, it's 2001. He's supposed to be in his 30s, right? He was 12 in 1981. It's 2000. So yeah, he's like 32 right now. So
I mean, I feel like she probably died when he was in his early 20s. That's my feeling.
Yeah.
That's my gut feeling here.
I think you're right. But yeah, it's just like, oh, we need to start preparing Jack for, helping us once again, because we know the tower's under threat and we know we're going to need him again. So let's bring that cancer back.
Yep.
Fucking assholes.
Yeah.
So Patsy tells the story of being a Chicago contractor in the 70s. There's not a lot to talk about, analyze here, but I just love that the book takes the time. This is like, sometimes novels are allowed to sprawl, and I just love that, like, we learn of this world of mokes, of shady deals, of swinking your competition, like all this flavor of this other world of, like, the shady dealings of building contractors. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Did it work for you? Did the flavor work for you here?
Oh yeah, it's very fun. It's kind of dipping into that noir well.
Sure.
I still don't really know what a moke is, but that's fine.
It's a moke, yeah.
It's a moke. It's a moke.
Oh, Burnsides. Okay. He's a moke.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, it is funny how the book doesn't really ever actually explain what that is. It's just like, it's a guy.
I actually Googled, like, what does the slang term moke mean, like, actually, and I couldn't really figure it out, to be honest.
Is this just a made up Stephen King word?
No, it's not. No, I mean, I think it's definitely a real, but I think it's one of those ones that kind of just means, like, a guy.
Okay.
But, like, it didn't seem to have a super specific definition. It's the kind of thing where you can imagine it might have meant different things, actually, depending on who was using it.
Sure. Fair. So, of course, Patsy is remembering the man he screwed over, who we already know is Charles Burnside. And like we said before, we learn the killer's name in this conversation. We learn the killer's name. We learn he might be at Maxton's. And it's amazing how Jack goes from completely unaware to how close he is to solving the case. But of course, our investigation is about so much more than Charles Burnside's at this point, right? Like, because we learned something else here. We learned about the Black House.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in a normal detective story, it would be almost done. This would be all wrapped up pretty soon. But nope,
Yeah.
not this time.
Yeah, definitely, because we have this titular Black House. Still don't really understand what it means, but we learn that it's super evil, right? We learned that basically the people that were building it, they died, or got accidents. It was a place people called haunted before it was even finished being built, and that nobody in town seems to remember what this place is. I love this moment here when he first says Black House. He says the name of the house was Black House, and Jack's eyes widen. The image of Henry Layton's cozy living room crosses his mind, sitting with a drink and his elbow reading about jaundice and jaundice. Did you say Bleak House? Black, Potsy reiterates impatiently, because it really was. I wanted to point this out because I talked about this before, but the entire time I was reading this book, I thought Charles Dickens had a book named Black House. And every time they said the word Bleak House, I was just reading Black House. Like my brain was just turning it into Black House. And it wasn't until I got to this moment where Jack specifically says, "Did you mean Bleak House?" I went like, oh, Charles Dickens, it's Bleak. Oh.
That's funny.
Just so those out there know, I am an idiot at times.
That is interesting. Of course, I couldn't have possibly made that mistake because I'm doing the audiobook and not relying on my feeble human eyes.
It's not like Bleak and Black even look that close to each other, except for they start with a BL and end with a K, right? Like, it's just the way your brain doesn't actually read words. That's why it can read a sentence with all the words just slightly out of order, you know?
Yeah, no, you're right.
That's just what my brain was doing.
You see what you expect to see, generally speaking.
Yeah. So before he can get any more information about Black House from Potsy, the state troopers show up and they're pissed off. They're pissed off that Dale was holding them up, and they're pissed off at Jack performing an interrogation here, and they're just mad about this whole thing. But they go to take away the prisoner, and they manhandle him a little bit, and Jack gets pissed. And we talked about Jack being back, right? And this is really one of the big moments where Jack is back, where he says, "Troopers, abuse that prisoner one more time in my sight, and I'll be on the phone to the Madison Shoofy Pies the minute you leave. And believe me, troopers, they will listen to me. Your attitude is arrogant, coercive, and counterproductive to the resolution of this case. Your interdepartmental cooperation skills are non-existent. Your demeanor is unprofessional and reflects badly upon the state of Wisconsin. You will either behave yourselves, or I guarantee you that by next Friday, you'll be looking for security jobs." It's just like, you're just like, fuck yeah, man.
It was a super satisfying moment in a story that hasn't really given us a ton of wins. This is kind of a low moment in a lot of ways, and it's just really feels good to have Jack step in and use his kind of gunslingerly power of just authority and voice.
Right. It's one thing to say Jack is back, and it's another to show it. And I think a lot of this chapter is specifically showing it, and this is one of the greatest instances of that. Yeah,
and it's important that the people around him react correctly. Like Black and Brown seem to shrink as he speaks.
Yeah. They look like chastened children.
Yeah. As opposed to like them becoming angry and back talking, right? So like that just shows that like his sense of gravitas is back.
I agree. So they leave, they take the prisoner away, and Jack is trying to get information from Dale about Black House. And I love the scene, Matt. This is one thing we were talking about with detective stories before. Dale is not telling the truth about Black House when he says he's never heard of it, but he's not lying either, right? It's just like he's got like a mental block about it, which is, I think, we kind of see as part of the magic of this place, is like you just forget about it for some reason.
Yeah.
But subconsciously he's aware of this. And so when Jack is pushing on this mental block, he's getting very upset and uncomfortable. And I just love the way the text demonstrates Jack's observing of Henry's mood change. Like, it reminds me of when Henry was, or it's not Henry, of Dale. It reminds me of when Dale is talking to Jack and talking to him about his past, how Dale immediately detects Jack's hesitance and his wanting to push away from this conversation. It's a very similar situation, just kind of flipped.
Yeah, that's a fun connection. I didn't think of that. But yeah, you're totally right. I mean, it's an overtly magical influence, right? It's not at all subtle. This is a magical place that literally mind whammies people.
Mm-hmm. So after all this, Jack heads home, dropping Henry off on the way. No reading of Bleak House tonight. The searching for the Black House, with the help of our biker gang, begins tomorrow. But for tonight, Jack can't sleep. The case and what it all means is swirling in his head. So he goes out under the stars and flips over to his happy place. And I love the text. The text makes this seem like a kind of addiction thing, right?
Yeah.
Just for a little while, he thinks, just until those ghost voices empty out of my head. Just for a little while. Thinking this, he begins to drowse. Thinking this, he goes over. That's interesting word choices, right? Like trying to justify the use to himself of the territory's magic.
Yeah, he never really treated it that way before. It's like, I mean, okay, so I immediately jumped to the idea that I think one thing that we thought that it symbolized in the talisman was childhood. And, which has all sorts of interesting implications for this story, where childhood is something that Mr. Munchen is feeding on, quite literally.
Sure.
And here, I think Jack, as an adult, he's kind of being childish is a kind of indulgence for an adult. And so he's kind of indulging himself and allowing himself to I don't know. It's not
to run back into childhood.
To escape. I like that phrasing. Yeah. So I don't know if this is gonna become a problem, but it is something to keep an eye on for sure.
Sure. All right, Matt, chapter 18, our final chapter of the week, begins the following morning as the news of what happened at French Landing PD is shown all over the TV, including Wendell Green getting just delightfully smacked on the face with a flashlight. I think we should start with Wendell here, Matt, and I think the chapter kind of starts really reasoning with Wendell here, because you said something last week that I really liked, that we were talking about, were we kind of surprised the way Wendell's situation just kind of played out and nothing happened. There was no consequence of anything. Wendell was defeated in front of Ed's, and you said, but it was pretty clear to you that he wasn't going away, that he now has a grudge. Then we have the events of this week. Wendell defeated once again, handedly. And I think these two beats back to back kind of demonstrate a grudge building, right? And it strikes me how often Stephen King does this in his stories with these Wendell Green types, the bad guy that is kind of screwed over again and again until his resentment builds and builds until a moment where it could possibly blow over into something very bad. And we don't know that's going to happen with Wendell, but I think the building blocks are there, right?
Yeah, I would be surprised if it didn't at this point. And to be honest, the cops have been pretty damn unprofessional towards him. Like, he's been assaulted twice and then separately had his camera destroyed. And, in all cases, the people who did these things were like not quite cops wearing their uniforms and hats, but that doesn't make it better. These are clearly people who are aligned with the cops, and kind of the cops they're kind of proxies of the cops, Jack I forget which of the bikers did it. And of course, the Mad Hungarian here, who is a cop, he's just not in uniform. And each of these were illegal attacks committed by these authority adjacent people. Mm-hmm. And in a sense, he's not wrong to be like extremely angry about this. It's just that from our side of the story, we're like, you piece of shit, you keep interfering with this investigation to try to find a literal serial killer of children. Just get out of the way. Mm-hmm. At the same time, again, I'm like, just to be fair, if you kept getting beat up by cops, you'd probably have a bad attitude about it, I'm gonna guess.
Yeah, probably. I don't think the book is saying that Wendell Green is justified in his anger, but I do think you have a point that like these people have continually fucked him over. He's kind of very casual about the fact that he's going to have to now explain to his editor why he was putting himself in the story, which was probably not a good call to make. He's very confident that he's going to be able to do that, but I don't know, maybe that confidence is misplaced. We just don't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, he could be, fired, and then he'd be even angrier, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is really interesting because so much of the events of this week's reading are driven around the idea of revenge, right? The fisherman setting up George Potter is specifically to get revenge on him for what he did to him back in Chicago. And then we move to Wendell, who's angry now about what happened to him twice in a row and is, we can assume, perhaps plotting his own revenge, or at least is going to be around. And if an opportunity for revenge presents itself, you feel like he's the type of person that would jump on that immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And then the book moves from the scene with Wendell to Wanda Kinderling, the wife of the arrested Kinderling that we've been told several times throughout the book right now. Like, this is the thing that Jack did his first time he was in French Landing. It's what impressed Dale so much that he comes there and just immediately knows this guy is the one. He's it. He takes him back to California. They convict him. He's in jail now. Of course, here's his wife still in French Landing, and she's bitter about it. She's angry about it. And we don't actually do anything with Wanda here in the scene. Like, it's literally just a scene that cuts over to her showing how she's grudge-filled and angry at Jack. And then we just cut away, right? But here's another character with a grudge against Jack Sawyer. Here's another potential roadblock for a hero as he tries to move towards his goal. And we're just like setting these things up. We're just planting these seeds. And it really does. Like, the more Stephen King you read, I think the more you'll see this, especially, is like these specific types of characters, like the Wendell Green kind of sniveling asshole type that it's actually just a coward underneath everything, is the type of person that again and again he will put in these situations where they lose and they lose and they lose and they lose, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds until there's this explosive moment. And again, I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen with this character, but the seeds are there. Yeah,
and I think by emphasizing this other character, Wanda, it makes us, I don't know, it reminds me of No Good Deed Goes Unpunished, because it's like like Jack has clearly been trying to right wrongs and straighten pictures in hotel rooms, but every time he does, he makes another enemy, and maybe those I don't know, those chickens are going to come home to roost, or whatever the phrase is.
yeah, okay. So we then head back to Maxton's and a dreaming Bernie, but we learn here, Matt, that these aren't his dreams. They're Mr. Munchin, which is a name we have heard before, right? This is one of the things that Judy Marshall wrote down on the paper when she was having dreams, and we're kind of told this is the name of whatever demon is currently inhabiting Bernie.
Yeah, I do wonder if there's like a reference here that I'm not getting, but in any case, Munchin that's such a great name. It has that like kind of gross mouthfeel to it.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure we'll be talking more about Munchin in the future, so there might be ample opportunities to talk about if that's a reference to anything or what it means.
Okay.
So, having just updated us on the goings on of all the jerks of French Landing, we now move over to poor Tansy for now. Jack is visiting her in the morning, just like he promised to do. And I think I found the scene incredibly disturbing. We knew that Tansy was not well. We knew that. The book kind of told us that sanity left her. But I don't think I was prepared the first time I read this for just how insane she is at this moment. Like she sees Jack, and like the way she talks and like the demands for, kisses and affection is just incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, my interpretation of what's going on here is like the magic of the flowers is still affecting her. So there's sort of this veneer of pleasant madness covering the much more destructive madness underlying it, and maybe giving her some time to partly heal before she kind of completely loses it. But in any case, yes, it's very upsetting and horrifying.
Yeah. So Tansy begins telling Jack about Gorg the Crow and what he told her. He comes from Night's Plutonian shore, we're told, which is a world that is not part of our world, but not necessarily another world as well. She describes it as a world all alongside our world, a bad world where everything is on fire. There's a giant tower of fire, she says, which it doesn't seem like she's describing the Dark Tower, by the way. Like that. No, possibly, but it doesn't seem like it.
No, it sounds more like it's just hell, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Later in the chapter, Jack kind of tries to reason what the hell's going on here, right? Like he looks at what he understands the territories to be, the places he's visited even just the night before, and says none of what she is describing here sounds like the territories. I mean, how could it be? It just doesn't sound like even the Blasted Lands was not a place actively on fire and burning. So what do you think? Is this a third world? Is this a part of the territories we just haven't seen yet? What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's a different world. I think Mr. Munchen and Gorg et al. Are foreigners to both Earth and to the territories. I think they're from somewhere else. One thing it does remind me of, territories-wise, would be what Wolf called the pits, which were the sort of very hell-like locations where there were like gargoyles and...
Yeah, we did flip over into a very hell-like location briefly,
but we didn't really figure out what that was, you know, like
that's true.
Where that was, it's like I would almost be willing to believe that wasn't even in the territories, you know.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of what I don't think of these as being like, you know, plot holes, but like we had the question of like, why is it that every time Richard goes to the territories, it's a fucking shithole, and every time Jack goes, it's heaven. Like, and we never not that I needed an answer to that, but I thought it was interesting. So like maybe this could very well be just like some aspect of the territories that we just didn't see because Jack's special. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been so intentionally vague about the territories broadly, you know, like it's just a place we're kind of told, and I mean, like, almost contradictory at times, right? We're told it's this wonderful place where everything's better and stronger and happier and a better version of the world, but also it has this nuclear wasteland and these pits possibly, and also there's terrible people, you know. It's
the trees try to eat you.
Yeah. So like there's a contradiction that is the territories, and maybe we'll get some answers around this contradiction in this book. But right now, yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to look at this whole thing and kind of reach the same conclusion that Jack reaches. Is like, this can't be the territories. I was just there. It seems like everything's going okay over there.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
So one of the things the book is clearly doing with Tansy here that I think is worth talking about is drawing a direct comparison between her and Judy Marshall, right? Both have had their children taken by this great evil that is the fisherman. Ty, Judy's child, is still alive as far as we know. But still, they both have their children taken away from them by this great evil, and both have had direct interactions with the magical other world. You know, Judy, we know, goes to or has gone in her mind to a place that Jack has decided is the territories, the far away. Tansy has had direct interaction with Gorg, who comes from, you know, a hole in the world that ringed in fire. It's just crazy. But they both have reacted in very different ways to being presented with these two worlds, right? Like in Judy's case, it's almost like an ironic contradiction where she has gone to an insane asylum and has found herself more sane than ever. Like, she has accepted and just embraced the existence of this other world and is gaining strength from it. Whereas Tansy, this has completely destroyed her. There is barely any Tansy left inside her at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think other than the kind of boring level on which Judy is just obviously a super powerful psychic, and that might give her some protection.
Sure, I think that's true.
But that's, I don't know. That doesn't seem like an interesting observation. I do like the contrast, right? The stark contrast between the two situations and the two outcomes.
Yeah. Another bit of contrast that's worth talking about here is the kind of romantic entanglements between these characters. Maybe romantic is the wrong word, because we talked about this, but Tansy is kind of throwing herself at Jack here. He wants her to kiss her, probably do a little bit more than that. And that is compared pretty directly with the fact that Jack is now kind of like obsessed with Judy Marshall. Like he says again here that he's in love with her. That like in these moments where he's having this horrible conversation with this broken woman talking about these evil places, all he wants to do is run away and leave and drive up to her to just be in her presence again and be around her again. I find this very interesting, and I guess I wanted to pose the question to you to allow you to talk about this. Is we've talked a lot about the love lust paradigm present in King's universe in these Dark Tower books. I'm wondering, does this love triangle, for lack of a better phrase, tie into our understanding of that at all?
Yeah, it's hard to say at this point because I don't know where we're going with the story, and I will say Jack doesn't know anything about her, right? Like about Judy. You know, I think he's reacting to this idea that like there's this supernaturally beautiful woman who is associated with the territories, which are this huge life secret of his, and that makes her very unique and very, you know, kind of important automatically.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think this isn't explicit, but I feel like she kind of reminds me of his mother in certain ways.
Sure.
And just overall, I don't know. I definitely, I guess I lean more toward this being like the lust side of the axis, but I don't think we can say that we've really nailed down exactly how the dynamics of the love lust paradigm are supposed to work exactly. So,
yeah, that's fair. I mean, the love I feel like he's expressing for Judy here reminds me of, I forget what the character's name is, but one of the characters that was in Sunlight Gardener's home, you know, realizing after the fact that, oh, he was in love with Jack, you know, like that it's just like these people, these individuals, for whatever reason, for magical, powerful, white driven reasons, are just like emanate love to the point where if you look at them or you spend time with them, you just find yourself falling in love with them for some reason that we don't fully understand.
Yeah. I guess it depends. Like, is he going to try to steal her from her husband, or is he, or is he just like worshiping her as a sort of goddess, and he's going to be able to kind of keep his composure?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. I think the book is kind of making you wonder that as well. I mean, we leave chapter 18 with Jack saying, I'm going to Arden. I'm going to go talk to Judy again, this time on his own, right? No Fred Marshall this time with him. So
none of that pesky husband, right? Like,
I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but I think the book is inviting you to think about that.
Yes, sure. We are supposed to worry about this.
Mm-hmm. So he leaves the trailer, and I've got to talk about this for a while because here's smells again. Outside, the air seems heavy with bad odors and unseen chemicals. The lilies from the territories retained more power than Jack had imagined, enough to sweeten and purify Tansy's air. The ground beneath Jack's feet had been baked dry, and parched sourness hangs in the atmosphere. Jack has nearly to force himself to breathe as he walks towards his truck. But the more he breathes, the more quickly he will readjust to the ordinary world, his world, though now it feels poisoned. I think this is a really interesting beat, right? Because he leaves Tansy's trailer, which he says doesn't smell as bad as he thought because the power of the lilies is still hanging around there. And he basically travels back to his world, to our world. And it's the smells, he kind of reacts like Wolf did to the smells in our world, right? Like it's just incredibly overpowering. And then I didn't copy it, but a beat not too long from now, like he gets back into his truck and he's suddenly like, oh wait, it smells fine now. So lots of powerful stuff going on with smells in these stories.
Yeah, right. And this is another one of those beats that makes me think that at a certain point, maybe the real world will feel too poisoned for him to actually remain here. You know, he can adjust to it again at this point, but I don't know, maybe that won't be the same forever. We'll see. Sure.
So Jack heads to the sandbar at his noon appointment with the Thunder Five. He grabs a burger, which reminds you of, you know, Roland showing up at Tull ordering a burger. I was trying to link those. See, there's really nothing else to link besides the fact that they're sitting there eating a burger, but just imagining Jack the Gunslinger.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, I love it.
So while he is eating, he starts watching the movie being played on the television at the sandbar, which is, of course, a Lily Kavanaugh Sawyer picture. It is the 1950s comic Western, The Terror of Deadwood Gulch. The scenes we see most directly discussed here is one in which Lily is struggling to catch a bee. A bee, Matt.
It's the bee.
A bee for the queen of the bees. So yeah, I mean, this is like, we'll remind our listeners once again that this is not the first time we've seen bees. We saw the bee at the very beginning of the story. We saw the bee in the fisherman's slippers. And once again, here we have the queen of the bees, handling a bee. So what's going on with this bee stuff, Matt?
I don't know, man. It feels like Ka is really shoving the bee movie in Jack's face and saying, pay attention to bees. Bees are important.
Oh, the Seinfeld one? Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, that's what I was referring to.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, maybe it's literally just telling him like follow up on the bee slipper, but I don't actually think he knows about the bee slipper. I think that he just knows there's a slipper.
He knows that, yeah, he knows that there was a person seen that was missing one slipper. I don't think Jack's interview with Potter got to the point of it would look like a honeybee.
Pretty sure it did not. But anyway, keep his attention open to the idea of bees. And keep our attention open to the idea of bees too, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I think I do think there's a bit of Ka going on here, trying to get the character to pay attention to this thing, which we have reason to believe is significant.
Yeah, and I think we should say, like, telling us in this scene at least to associate the bee with queen his mother.
Bees. Yeah.
So finally, the Thunder Five show up, and I just want to state again, for the record, I love these guys so much. I love, like, they show up, they walk into the bar, and then the members of the Thunder Five separate and spread out in front of Jack. Most of them have crossed their arms on their chest, and muscles bulge. Like, you can just imagine them in kind of like a flying V formation, just standing there in front of Jack. I love it so much.
It is very fun.
So Jack tells them the story of George Potter and the Black House, and of course none of the bikers ever remember seeing or hearing about that place. Well, almost none of them, because as the more they talk about it, Mouse suddenly has a story to tell, and he tells the story of the summer of the ultimate acid, where he and his girlfriend at the time accidentally stumbled upon the Black House, and how horrible of an experience it was. We get barking dogs, headaches. Like, it just seems like the closer you get to the house, the more horror and terror is visited to them. I think we see Mouse is like reminded of when a girl had to crash her motorcycle and died. It's just like all the most awful things you can think of are visited to people when they get too close to this thing.
Yeah, that's the security system. Is it just drives people away, and then seemingly in most cases makes them forget. I guess maybe there's a subtle implication here that the reason he didn't forget is because he's gleaming the cube.
He's on the ultimate. Yeah,
he's on the ultimate acid, which by the way, just the idea of the ultimate acid feels like a background idea for a short story that Stephen King never got around to writing.
I bet you're 100% right.
So yeah, there's a lot of I don't know. It's definitely fun to consider what this house is doing and what it means, and how are they going to find it too.
I like the reasoning that, like, the reason he can remember this at all is maybe because of the acid. I also like the idea that, like, it's the type of thing where, like, you wouldn't remember it, but if someone triggers that memory specifically, it's like your neurons find a way to link back to that thing anyway. Like Mouse never would have remembered that the story had Jack not started talking about the Black House. And I think we were told when we first saw, like, the road leading up to it, the way the no trespassing sign is seemingly hidden unless you happen to look directly for it, So it just seems like there is some weird stuff going on with the memory and how this world works, and it is very confusing, and seems you're right, a security system. And I think we see that little Nancy here dies. She never fully recovers from the experience she had getting too close to this thing, and just kind of wastes away and dies afterwards. So
yeah, right,
some serious shit.
It's not super evil, like high power kind of demonic evil going on here.
Yeah. So I mean, what is it? Why?
Well, I'm going to go for a Hail Mary, and I'm
Okay,
going to say
go for
that,
it.
Mr. Munchen and or Gorg are trying to establish some kind of foothold in this world, as they seem to have already done in the territories.
Okay.
And they want to move in, but they need a doorway, and I think the house is the doorway. That's my theory.
All right. Well, we will find out. But not this week, because the chapter ends with Jack heading up to Arden to be with his love, and the Thunder Five heading out to look for the Black House that kills people just by getting too close to it. So hopefully they find it, but don't, find it.
Yeah, right. Hopefully there's going to be some trick. Some trick to get up to it. I'm
sure you're right. But that is going to do it. That is the end of our reading this week. Like I said, it was a long one. I think this was page count wise the longest amount of pages we were reading for this whole book. So yeah, this was a 95 page section. It's going to be a busy time to the finish, Matt. Next week, we're going to be reading 3 chapters 19 through 21. That will be another 72 pages. So not quite as much as this week, but still pretty hefty, these sections we're getting through.
Well, that makes me happy.
Yeah.
Because stopping is the worst part.
I agree. All right, so let's move on to our discussion questions section of the night. What was our question last week, Matt?
It was, what is your favorite character names from fiction?
In honor of Doodles and
the whole crew of the Four Stooges.
Yeah, and now we got Potsy this week. It's all just wonderful. I love all these names so much.
Me too. So first from Quirky Beans. What to do when you crash your grandma's car into her prized gnome garden after an all-night bender with the crew? Better call Saul. Don't worry, the best lawyer in town is on your side. So rest easy, because it's all good, man. It's all good, man. At your service. I just think it's clever.
Me too.
Yeah, that's great.
We got to watch Better Call Saul. I'm still mad at myself for falling behind on that show.
I haven't even started it because
I'm even more mad at you.
I'm mad at myself also. Like everyone just keeps saying that it's just
better than Breaking Bad.
Better than Breaking Bad. And I'm like, I don't. That's, first of all, that's impossible. Yeah, no, I'll watch it. I will.
Yeah, me too. Squatch42 says, my favorite character name is blah, blah, blah from Arrested Development. I don't remember any other time when the name of a character made me laugh so hard and so immediately. A lot of names are clever and give you a slight chuckle, but blah, blah, blah makes me belly laugh every time they say his name. I love blah, blah, blah when he's lobbing law bombs or logging onto the blog, onto the blah, 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 blah blog. I think I did a pretty good job reading that, by the way. I'm going to give myself credit for that.
That's great. Did you practice?
I did not.
Just for the record, that was not like the third take or anything, folks. Just came right out. That is great. That is so fun.
Did you watched Arrested Development, right?
I've seen a few episodes of Arrested Development. I've not watched Arrested Development.
We got some work to do.
I know.
That's the name of our new podcast. It's called We Got Some Work to Do, and it's just me showing you TV shows you should have watched.
It's good that this is our full-time job, is watching television, because that's the only way this would actually happen.
Oh wait, is that not? No, we have other jobs.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Whoopsie.
Well, we're gonna have to quit.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Patreon.com/stupid.
All right. Shenanigoats says, because I like how it sounds, Veruca Salt from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Just a great mix of letters and sounds, and a reflection of her bitter and posh personality, because it sums up the character. Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, perfectly unpleasant, and because it cracks me up, the time Homer Simpson started going by Max Power. When someone says it's a great name, he responds, yeah, I got it off a hairdryer.
I love The Simpsons.
Me too. Simpsons is always the right answer.
Dark Beer Rules says, I'll keep this short and sweet. From probably the most quotable movie ever made, The Name of the Spanish Swordsman. You have to read this next part with Mandy Patinkin's accent. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. I love the name. I love the character. I love the movie. Us too. Perfect movie. 100%.
Yeah, I think there's something cool about Inigo as a name, because it's it's almost like indigo.
Yeah.
But it's not, and that makes it cooler. I don't know.
I think all the names in that movie were really great, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
Fezzik is pretty good.
Fezzik is one of my favorite names ever. It's like, that should be a real name if it's not. Maybe
Why didn't you name your kid Fezzik?
Thought about it. All right. Maniac. That's clever. I like that. It's like a pun. It's like a pun on like Maine and maniac.
Yeah. Oh, I got it.
How quick you all forget. Ferd Janklow. Just say it to yourself like you're a gunslinger, narrowing your eyes at a galloping posse of robotic wolves. Ferd Janklow.
Good old Ferd. You really loved Ferd.
I loved Ferd. I'm still mad about what happened to Ferd.
Short time in this world, but
maybe they'll find him in the territories.
He got his entire ribcage crushed.
Don't be so negative, Scott.
He's definitely dead.
You're just fucking with me. I can tell.
Next, we have Baby Can You Dig Your Sam, who says, I'm going to answer this question from a few different angles. Angle number 1, alliterative names. The names that just roll off the tongue. Bilbo Baggins, Vincent Vega, Marty McFly, Willy Wonka, Jimmy James, Bobby Boucher. Angle number 2, the names that tell you something about the character. Think Harry Burns and Sally Albright from When Harry Met Sally. On iZombie, we have the main character named Olivia Moore, Liv Moore, and her super nice do-gooder boyfriend, appropriately named Major Lillywhite. And how could we ever forget Pussy Galore and Holly Goodhead from James Bond? Angle number 3, rich white guy names, like Knox Overstreet, Palmer Woodrow, Sebastian Valmont, Royal Tenenbaum, and Dickie Greenleaf. Not the great folksy names in a Stephen King book, but fun names nonetheless.
Yep.
Those are great.
I get most of these references too, so that's fun. I agree. There are... thanks for pointing out, Baby Can You Dig Your Sam, that there are multiple distinct reasons why a name can be a great name. It could just sound great, or it can be because it's just so fitting, you know? Yeah, I love it. Great. Complicated 9519 says, may I be allowed to use the name of an actor by chance? The first name to pop to mind was Billy Bob Thornton Jr. The fact that there's even a junior is pretty funny, I think. I remember hearing it as a kid and thinking it was an urban legend or something. Also, back in the day, a Japanese gaming company made an American baseball game or something, and they had to come up with a bunch of American names. I'm not sure if posting the picture works. So they post the picture, and they say their favorite from the list is Bobson Dugnut.
I love these names so much.
They're all so good. Yeah. DeWitt Rochergal,
Sleeve McDykel,
Todd Bonzales, Mike Truck.
Mike Truck is so good. Oh my God, these are so good.
Yeah.
They're all wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Mike Truck.
Raoul Chamberlain.
I think they're right though. Bobson Dugnut is pretty good.
They're all just amazing. They're all just
Glenn Allen Mixton.
Did you already say yeah. All right.
Willie Dustus. Yeah.
Dustus, yeah, that's great.
AL84001 says the greatest character name from ever is from where else? The Simpsons. Rather than straightforwardly admit to being attracted to a female coworker, Homer attempts to bring up a subject delicately, claiming that is instead a clearly made-up friend of his, Joey Jojo Jr. Shabadoo, which Moe interjects, "That's the worst name I ever heard." At this, a random background character suddenly jumps up and runs out of the bar crying, as Barney calls after him apologetically, "Hey, Joey Jojo!" While admittedly a show lousy with hundreds of characters, many of whom have great names, this is one that clearly stands a cut above. It's one of those delightful moments that is so absurd and hilarious it catches you completely off guard. As a result, Joey Jojo has been permanently imprinted in my brain for decades ever since.
Yes. Yeah.
I went and watched the scene again, and it's... God, this old Simpsons was so good. I mean, we talked about Max Power already. We talked about this. Also, speaking of The Raven, there's that Treehouse of Horror episode where they just literally did the whole poem, The Raven, into a 10-minute animated short.
Yeah. I mean, the absence of quality Simpsons is what is wrong with the world now.
I agree.
Me and my kids named one of our fish Joey Jojo Jr. Shabadoo. I just have to... I know I'm explaining the joke, but like, the thing that always kills me is that Homer he's so dumb, and so it's Joey Jojo Jr. and then you can sort of see him be like, I need to add something else, and then he adds Shabadoo after Junior, which makes no sense, obviously.
My favorite part when you go rewatch the scene is he says Joey Jojo Jr. Shabadoo, and like you see Joey Jojo in the background like look up at that moment because someone just said his name.
Yeah.
And then Mo immediately says, "That's the dumbest name worst name I ever heard."
That's the worst name I ever heard.
Joey Jojo.
Oh God, I love The Simpsons so much.
I love it so much.
It's painful.
Okay, let's move on.
Thank you. All right. Coach Wargo says, it's rare that I get a chance to answer a listener question a week late, but you gave me some great opportunity. One of my favorite character names just happens to be the name of my favorite detective, Hieronymus Harry Bosch. Harry is a homicide detective with the LAPD, and as such, he sees all the depravities of man here on Earth. He is named for a Dutch Renaissance artist who also studied the depravities of man and the punishment it would bring in the next life. Boy, howdy, it is some dark stuff. Bosch, the painter's work, The Garden of Earthly Delights, is a triptych showing the fall of man from the Garden of Eden on the left, the sins here on earth in the center, heavy on the lust, and the punishments of hell on the right. If you look at Bosch's works, there are often owls somewhere within them. These owls play a big part in one of Bosch's in one of the Bosch detective novels. Harry has always been a somewhat dark character, and in The Darkness More Than Night, that's a book, Darkness More Than Night, bad people start getting killed in ways that are straight out of some Bosch paintings, always with a plastic owl left looking on at the crime scene. The book was written in such a way that we, the reader, begin to question whether or not Harry has gone off the deep end. Harry's name was always intriguing to me, and this book was a brilliant way for Michael Connelly to tie the Bosch character to his namesake. That's great. It kind of reminds me of how King names books stuff like The Wasteland to try to trick you into reading The Wasteland.
Yeah, no, I like that. Have you ever watched this TV show?
No.
I feel like it's like a huge TV show. My parents have been telling me like every year that I need to watch the Bosch show, and I haven't. But I haven't read any of the books either. But
I barely have any awareness of what this even is. I didn't even know there was a TV show.
Yeah, it's huge.
Wow.
Like people call it a boomer show, and I don't like that because I hate that term. But it's very popular. I mean, at least under certain demographics. I think probably skews a little older, but not entirely. But there's like 7 seasons. It's like really popular. I think they just released. There's something called Bosch Legacy that came out after it that I think was just like a limited series that continued the Bosch story. It's I don't know, man. Are
we in the Berenstain universe or the Berenstein universe right now?
I don't know.
Okay.
Wait, what is there like a Bosch version of a different universe?
No, I'm just wondering if like you're telling me there's this incredibly popular TV show that I've literally never heard of. I just wonder if there was some slippage.
The problem is you hang out on Twitter too much, and people don't talk about Bosch on Twitter.
Yeah.
They talk about Bosch on Facebook.
I don't hang out in the places where people talk about Bosch. Okay,
yes.
I gotcha.
But I want to check it out. I'm sure I'd like it. Felidao says there are so many fun character names in fiction that I would probably take me hours combing through my memory for my favorites, so I'll just throw out the first 3 that occurred to me. Chandler Bing from Friends. It's written Bing, but it's pronounced Bing. Somehow Chandler's name was always mildly comical in the way that allowed people to make fun of him merely by saying his name, but in such a subtle manner that there were always plausible deniability, thus making Chandler perpetually paranoid, anxious, and self-conscious, which is how we like him best. Number 2, Darth Vader, a name that conveys power, dread, and darkness. Classic. Yeah, until the new stuff fucked it up.
Yeah.
Rawhead Rex. This is a character from a short story of the same name taken from the Clive Barker horror collection, The Books of Blood. The name is both cartoonish and grotesque, which perfectly encapsulates the character of Rawhead Rex himself, who is a gigantic 9-foot-tall monster who feeds on the flesh of humans. Coincidentally, like the fisherman in Judy Marshall's Dream, Rawhead also has the taste for children's kidneys. Clive Barker writes some pretty wild stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild.
Sounds like it. Rawhead Rex.
Sitting here with doing the air quotes, wild, yes.
That is not the image I got when I read Rawhead Rex.
No.
I imagined a cartoon dinosaur.
Yeah, I got a much more whimsical notion, actually.
Yes.
But okay. Yes, Darth Vader. No matter how hard they try, they can't quite ruin Darth Vader, despite how hard they are trying. All right. Pear Jane says first and last name in Great Names. Rupert Pupkin, Robert De Niro's terrible stand-up comic from Scorsese's King of Comedy, who holds a TV host hostage so he can try for his big break. It's not their greatest movie, but Robert De Niro plays a terrible stand-up comic named Robert Pupkin, and that's worth the price of admission. And then they made the Joker movie based on that.
Yeah, loosely based on that movie.
Loosely based on that. Pear Jane goes on to say, I also humbly submit Barney Standish, PhD, an offstage character from a play I wrote back in the aughts. We never meet Barney Standish, PhD, but we know he's a television archaeologist who, by his wife's admission, is always off desecrating some tomb or other. The play never got past the stage reading phase, but I mentioned the name to a friend once, and she said she'd be naming her next cat Barney Standish, PhD, which is
That's a pretty good name.
Yeah, I like it. I like that you have to say the PhD every time.
Of course.
Because it works with the Standish PhD. It's like a assonance thing. I like it.
Mm-hmm. My two favorite fictional character names come from the same novel, Neil Stephenson's 1992 cyberpunk epic Snow Crash. The main character is named Hero Protagonist. The second main character goes by YT, which stands for Yours Truly. I like the book fine. It's not my favorite of Stephenson, but I read it pretty early in my high school days, just as I was starting to write fiction myself. And it struck me so hard that you can literally just do anything you want with the story you're writing. Like, this was a respectable author writing a relatively serious book with themes and ideas in it, and rather just have the hero protagonist who something badass like John McClane, he just said, screw it, I'll call him whatever the fuck I want in my book. It was a bit of a turning point for me in terms of realizing creative freedom in writing. Also, David S. Pumpkins.
Excellent.
Do you know what David S. Pumpkins is?
No, I don't.
Tom Hanks went on SNL during a Halloween episode and dressed up as a character named David S. Pumpkins, who is just Tom Hanks wearing a suit with pumpkins all over it, being creepy and dancing. It's the most wonderful thing. Just Google David S. Pumpkins after this recording and go watch it. It's just so funny.
Okay, I will. That's not something I've ever heard of.
But I'm sure you agree with these Stevenson answers because you are a lover of Mr. Neil Stephenson.
Yes, I am. There's a lot going on with the character names, actually. I don't even have time to go into it. But the character names in that book particularly, there's like large volumes of subtext.
Sure.
So like on one level, hero protagonist is just a sight gag, but also it's like part of a pattern of race commentary that he's doing. Anyway, moving on to the next. Shortstop 88 says, favorite character name? I can't do that. What I can do is write 7 names of characters that I like because there is a vague pattern to them. Bartholomew Kuma, Gecko Moria, Boa Hancock, Don Quixote do Flamingo, Crocodile, Dracul Mihawk, and Jinbei.
Stop reading. $100,000 this is an anime.
Okay,
continue.
I'll take that bet.
Okay.
These are the names of the 7 warlords of the sea, a set of powerful pirates in the world of One Piece who decide to work on the side of the world government so that they no longer...
Winner.
So Scott, I take that bet means I agree with you, right? That's what that sentence means, right?
No.
No? Oh shit. Oh God. Oh no.
Looks like I can quit my job.
Yeah. For
a year.
For some amount of time. Each of the warlords uses their freedom for various reasons, but what's important is their names. While nearly all the warlords are human, each of their names references an animal. Mihawk is hawk, Boa is a type of snake, Crocodile's name is obvious, Doflamingo has flamingo, Gecko is gecko, Kuma means bear in Japanese, Jinbei means whale, shark in Japanese. Many of them have traits that resemble the animals, while others simply wear clothing that references the animals, while others still actually have those animals kept around their houses and home bases. The creator of One Piece chose to have all of them have animals in their names, and I just find that fun. It is fun. I admit that I'm partial to the anime thing where there'll be like a team with a particular theme, and then everybody has like a gimmick, you know. It can be fun.
I guess we're gonna have to watch this One Piece show, right?
Yeah.
No.
What the fuck just happened? What?
No, we're not gonna do that.
Oh, okay.
All right, next we have Belwus Deserves Better, who says, I love the meaning of names in fiction and how a name can immediately relate to the reader expectations for a character. In Joe Abercrombie's First Law series, there's a naming tradition amongst the Northmen, RE traditional fantasy barbarian types, of the best and most famous fighter being named men. Most of these names sound super cool, like Bloody Nine, Thunderhead, Dog Man, Black Doe, or The Nail. However, there is one character named Shivers, who in his first on-page appearance claims it's because the thought of meeting him in a battle makes men shiver. In later books, we learn it's really because on his first raid, he fell into a frozen river and was half frozen and shivering by the time he got back to his group. It really makes you reconsider all these badass names these fearsome warriors wear with pride, and Abercrombie likes to play with this reputation versus reality angle in many different ways.
That's fun.
Yeah, like you look at Dogman, and maybe it's because like he looks like a dog.
Yeah, probably. Kind of reminds me of the new Top Gun movie too, where there's a character whose call sign is Hangman, and there's a fun backstory for why that might be. No spoilers.
Would you not just say, I don't want that name? It's a weird thing to put on your helmet.
Well, I agree with you, but also he's such a like son of a gun that you can imagine him doing it just as a fuck you to everybody. But I don't know.
There's also a character in that named Fanboy.
Yeah.
What is he a fanboy of?
I kind of wonder. I don't actually know how like call signs work in the military, but maybe it's just like everybody decides that's your call sign and you don't really get a say in it.
And then you proudly display it on your helmet and the side of your plane.
Because otherwise you kind of have to be a tool to be like, my call sign is Maverick. Like other people would have to call you that for that to actually be cool. True. You know?
I do know that the director of that film let each of the actors pick their character's call sign.
Okay.
With the exception of probably Hangman, since that's plot relevant.
Yes.
But that's Top Gun Maverick. Good movie. Go see it.
Yeah, Top Gun Maverick. Anyway, this was a fun discussion. Oh yeah, the podcast. Just Stand 8460 says Queequeg, a very exotic sounding name that feels hard to pronounce without sounding like you're overusing your glottal stops while practicing French. You may remember him from a light read called Moby Dick, in which the reader is given an in-depth history of whaling, the anatomy of various kinds of whales that were being hunted during the mid-19th century, as well as a detailed account for how to process the blubber while at sea. If you stick with it, you may notice a story Melville snuck in about a guy trying to catch a particularly elusive and dangerous sperm whale. When first introduced to Queequeg, you are horrified to learn he is a cannibal and heavily marked with tattoos, which are his people's complete written theory of heaven and earth. Though this can be jarring, you eventually come to love him for his steel during the most aggressive melees, as well as his devotion to the protagonist. He's a great character, and it's a great name. Honorable mention, Max Power, great name. Thanks, I got it from a hairdryer.
So much Simpson stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. I when I was like very young, I tried to read Moby Dick because it seemed like a thing that smart people did. And I actually bounced off of it just because I was honestly too young. But the name Queequeg and the character of Queequeg really, really stuck with me. Like I think that speaks to how that's actually like an important novel is like what I did read actually really did stick with me. And the Queequeg introduction is really close to the beginning. That's cool name, cool character.
Cool. Jennifer W. says, I haven't read it since I was in college around 1986 or so, but I remember them this to this day, and they still make me laugh. In Thomas Pynchon's The Crying Lot 49, there's a character named Bloody Chiclets, which, if it weren't funny enough just referring to the brand of chewing gum, apparently is street slang for someone who gets punched in the mouth. White chiclets, the gum kind of look like teeth. And a band by the name of Sick Dick and the Volkswagens. I didn't get that book at all when I was in college, but I'm thinking I may have to give it another go just to see.
Cool.
Bloody Chiclets is a great name.
Yeah, I agree. And Steve L says, it has to be Bango Skanks. Just has to be.
That is a great choice because the only thing we know about Bango Skanks is his name.
Uh-huh.
And yet it is everything. Like you can imagine who this person is just from that name.
Yeah. The mystery will be resolved someday.
Mm-hmm. No, it won't, Matt. Let's hope. Let's not hope. We don't need a Bango Skanks prequel.
Bango Skanks, the novel.
Jennifer D says, I love cheeky names that give you a clue into a character's personality. The first to come to mind is Trixie from Deadwood. She'll knock on your door, show you the goods, and while you're distracted, she'll shoot you. Very Trixie Indeed.
I haven't seen Deadwood, but
I know.
I like that. I like that.
We've got work to do. I told you.
We've got work to do. Finally, Sigma says, much to your pleasure, I've recently revisited the first video game I ever played at the age of 5, which is part of a series known for its euphonic names, Halo. There's the Green Warrior you play as, Master Chief, and his real name, John 117, both of which are a pleasure to orate. I always liked the theological references like the Flood and the Mjolnir Power Assault Armor, Foehammer, Reclaimer, 343, Guilty Spark, the Pillar of Autumn, Gravemind, etc. I really have to commend the writers for having such an ear for sounds. Yeah, wasn't one of the ships named Truth and Reconciliation or something like that?
I don't know, man. I've never played those games.
I played the first 3 because that's what me and one of my high school friends would do every summer when we came back from college, is we just play whatever the newest Halo game was in co-op. Yeah, they did have some good names though. Cool. Sigma goes on to give a mention to Humbert by Nabokov and a few others, but it's getting late.
That's Lolita, right?
Yeah.
That's Hubert Humbert.
Is it Hubert Humbert?
Yeah. I think so.
Okay. Something like that. I don't remember. I haven't read Lolita.
It's actually Humbert. I think I did the brain thing.
You did the thing where it didn't make any sense for it to be Humbert.
Yeah. So I just changed it in my brain, which is apparently what brains do. Great. I love them.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone who sent those questions in. Those were great. I really enjoyed those, especially, of course, going down Simpsons memory lane. And speaking of Simpsons memory lane, Matt, our question for next week doesn't really have anything to do with The Simpsons, but the reason why The Raven is one of my favorite poems of all time is specifically because the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode that really just kind of forces you to just listen to it and enjoy it. And it's just, The Simpsons was art, man. But but anyway,
not just listen to it, but by animating it, it helps you pay attention to the words, you know?
Right. Really, especially when it interjects the wonderful the wonderful poetry being read by James Earl Jones with Homer actually reading out the dialogue parts of the actual poem.
I agree.
It just makes, it's wonderful. And it's The Raven. It's so good. Watch the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode on it. But before you do that, please write in and let us know what your favorite poem is. Obviously, we're not going to be able to read everyone's poem. Like we're not going to read all the favorite poems because that would take 17 hours. But just let us know what your favorite poem is and why.
Yeah, I can't wait because this will hopefully give us a whole bunch of awesome poems that we can read.
That's what I'm hoping for, Matt, because I mean, like we talked about this way back at the beginning of the show, that I am just not a guy who would call myself a poetry enthusiast, but really studying the Dark Tower and all the ways in which King has, linked and sewn poetry through all of the books that we've covered has really made me appreciate it on a new level. And so I'm always looking for more poetry to read.
Yeah, me too.
All right, that is it for us this week. We will be back next week as part 3 of Black House continues. Once again, we are going to be reading chapters 19 through 21 of the novel. And Matt, if you can believe it, after next week, we've only got 2 more weeks of book.
I can't. Don't want to.
Next week is chapter 19 through 21. After that is chapters 22 through 25. And then after that is 26 through the end of the book. It's happening fast.
Wow. Yeah, it really is. So remember, you can reach out to us via email at kingslingerspod@gmail.com, or on Twitter at kingslingerspod, or over on the subreddit on Doof Media. I'll be eagerly awaiting all of your poem submissions.
Yes, please. Actually, just record yourself reading the poem out loud and send them that way.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do that if you want to. I'm not being serious, but
yeah, we're not going to do anything with it, but
but I mean, we'll listen to it. It'll be nice.
Right.
If you're not already subscribed to Kingslingers, now is the time to do so. You can find us anywhere, man. We're all over the place. We're all over the world. This thing's going worldwide.
Literally, yes. And if you like
from day one.
Yeah, true. And if you like the Kingslingers podcast and you want to support it, then please consider donating to our Patreon account at patreon.com/doofmedia. Special thanks this week to new patrons William C, Jen C, and David M. Welcome. We hope you enjoy our bonus material, such as the Firestarter episode that we just did this week.
Yeah, it's only half as long as the movie, so you only have to listen to us instead of watching the movie, and then we just saved you time.
Yeah.
I made that same comment on the show itself, but that's a preview for you. That's called salesmanship.
That's right. That's what that. Yeah.
It's very late. We're very tired. If you cannot afford to donate to us right now, that is absolutely okay. You can help us out by sharing this podcast, I know you continue to do, because we get emails from people all the time saying they found the podcast from sharing. So please keep that up, and thank you so much for doing it. You can, of course, always help us out by leaving a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or on any of the other multiple platforms that have it. I think, like we said, I think Audible has a place to review us now. By the way, I was reading those Audible reviews, and one reviewer noted that we use the word sure a lot. And ever since I read that review, I can't stop hearing myself say the word sure, and it's just destroyed my life entirely.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Sure. This week's Spotlight Review, though, comes from Graham Cracker, who doesn't mind us using the word sure and gives us 5 stars and says, "Good. A wonderful podcast that I enjoy listening to, even if I'm not reading along with them." They also put "good" in quotes, so I think that's a reference to one of those times where we were begging people to leave us rating and reviews, and we told them to just write a review that just said "good."
Yeah.
So thank you, Graham, for doing that.
Short and sweet. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we love it. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for sending in those reviews. Even the people that tell us we say the word "sure" too much, because you're totally right, and that's destroyed me. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, folks. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you right back here next week for more Black House, long days, and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.
Sure.